Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the ACE Performance Training Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Andrew Wiltse of Daisy Fresh. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I just got back from the gym. I'm excited. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'm down to talk about anything at any time, so it doesn't matter to me.
Sweet. So generally, we talk about all kinds of jiu-jitsu stuff. We'll kind of get started with like what got you into training, any kind of grappling at all, or any kind of martial arts in the first place. Kind of start there.
Yeah.
And see where we go.
So that's a long story, actually.
Well, then,
because it involves wizardry, the KKK, basically. Like it's actually kind of complicated. So, like, I was born in California. I was not born in a hospital. I was delivered by my dad in our house.
Okay.
And people get confused about this. I do have a birth certificate, but my parents waited longer than they were supposed to file it, I think. So like I have a social security card and I have a birth certificate, but that's why I keep running into issues getting my passport.
Okay.
It's like I'm not off the grid completely. I do exist. But the fact that my dad delivered me at my house instead of just taking my mom to a hospital and everything should tell you a little bit about the eccentricity that my family lived by.
Yes.
Okay. They are all natural. Okay. They don't believe in science or medicine. Really. They don't, they think they have magical healing powers and they think they can use crystals to heal everything. And from cancer to a stroke to a bruise, it doesn't matter. The magical crystal healing energy. Okay. Obviously, I think that is complete bullshit and absolutely insane. But I'm also 29 now and I'm hyper rational. And when I was 4, I did not. I was told that I was a wizard.
Okay.
And that I had magical powers, and so did my siblings and everything. And we were supposed to be reincarnations of people. My parents thought that I was a reincarnation of Hercules, and Bird was a reincarnation of. I hear different answers for this. I don't quite remember, but it was like Jesus or something. It was like a high level god. Okay. He was supposed to be the healer, and I was supposed to be the warrior, and my job was to protect Bird, and that's what we were told growing up. So, and this is in the 21st century.
Yes.
Right. This is insane. This is nuts.
Oh, there's a lot of people into that right now. Trust me.
Oh yeah. There's always people that just can't think very well in the world, but that was how we were raised.
Yes.
Okay. And we would all the time, every part of our life, we were dealing with that in some way.
Okay.
From our parents giving us exercises that were supposed to make us magically more powerful. Okay. Something, for example, like sitting there and staring into a mirror and looking at your forehead. And when your face starts to morph, you're actually looking at your past lives.
Okay.
Because they don't know what optical illusions are.
Yes.
And it's like there's a distinct lack of critical thinking ability going on, or it's not being applied correctly. And a lot of times that's the problem. It's not that people are stupid. It's that they're narrowly stupid. Is the way I would put it. They're like able to apply critical thinking skills to a whole aspect of their life, but not this one.
But we're not taught those anymore, so that's kind of the issue.
We are, but just people suck at it.
Yeah.
And they're not taught how to apply it in a broad way. Like geometry class is just purely your ability, like a proof. Is just your ability to think critically and to be rational. And it just doesn't get applied past that point. And actually, that's the part where I realized everyone around me was an absolute moron. Because A equals B equals C was fucking too much for them. And I'm like, oh man, people are actually just dumb.
Yes.
And not able to think well. But going back to California and being a wizard, I lived in California until I was 10. And then my dad he told us he had a dream where God told him to move us to Michigan.
Okay.
Because apparently God just does that. And he just packed everything up and took me and Bird and our dogs up to Michigan. We didn't have a house up there yet. He just wanted us in Michigan because that's where he grew up, and God told him to do that.
Okay.
There can't be any other explanation, obviously. So we didn't want to go either. Like I was upset. I liked California, and I was very much against change of any kind.
Yes.
All the time. That was just my personality. Partly because I'm probably just a tiny smidgen bit on the spectrum a little.
Me too.
I didn't want to do it. So I moved to Michigan with a bad attitude. And plus it's a huge culture shock because we went up to northern Michigan, which is not, it's like basically a separate state.
By the UP
we were in the UP. We were up as far north and east as you can go. I was 1 mile from Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I ended up living on an island up there.
Okay.
So, but going back to the wizard stuff, okay, that we would get in trouble sometimes because our parents would tell us to try to manifest people coming in and buying crystals from the store and different things happening. And like, if it wasn't, sometimes they would be like, well, did you do the exercise I told you to do today? And then we're like, yes. No, you didn't. You're right. And then we're in trouble, you know? So then one time I like
Okay.
threw a tantrum in the car and the car stopped and they said it was because I short circuited it with my magic. So it was my fucking fault that my dad's a mechanic and fucks with our cars all the time and it broke. So there's a lot of hostility towards that. I'm against anything that is even remotely like that. Like I don't even like religion. I just think it's all
I feel you.
a lack of ability to think. You know, it doesn't actually map reality whatsoever, and people don't apply any critical thinking skills to that kind of stuff. It's like taboo to even talk about.
They're just told
But
what to, yeah, and
it's
they just
it's indoctrination, and you just
regurgitated
don't.
information a lot of times. So.
Yeah, I was indoctrinated in this, and there's no difference between me being told I'm a wizard and you being told you're a Christian. It's
Yes.
the same exact thing. It's just nobody
Yes.
thinks about it that way
It's true.
because numbers matter. So,
Yes.
anyways, we moved. So one of the big things my dad always told us was he's really good at telling stories, and he's really big on morality. Like my dad's a good person, a very good person. He's the kind of guy that if he saw you broken down on the side of the road, he would stop the car and spend 2 hours helping you fix the car, get to the gas station, just genuinely helping people. And
Yeah.
he kind of raised us to value that big time. And you know, my dad's kind of a superhuman when it comes to being physically strong and fast.
Okay.
He was tested when he was 34 from a national database for reflex time from eye to foot. Okay, where they brought everyone in and how fast can you see a light turn red and then hit a pedal. Okay, and I
Yes.
think that's the longest reaction time possible because you can react with your hands a lot quicker than you can send a signal to your foot.
Focus
And
so
my
far.
dad
Yeah.
was in like the 99th percentile. He was like the top 1% in the country at the age of 35, you know?
Wow.
And so genetically, I have a pretty decent advantage over some people in certain ways. But
The way
I've
your brain
also
works. Yeah.
there's that. Well, I like to think I did not get my critical thinking ability from my parents. Obviously,
Yes.
um, I was able to luckily develop that because I became really I valued rationality and critical thinking strongly because of my strong reading that I always did. But
Yes.
that's coming up still. So my dad was a superhuman. I watched him pick up a car engine and put it in a car one time. It was 550 pounds and he literally picked it up. You know, normal
Just
people get a crane and shit. He
yeah.
literally just picked it up and walked it over and put it down. And then it wasn't until later in life I realized how absurd that was. So he was incredibly powerful and incredibly fast, and he's very smart. He was one of the top automotive engineers for GM in the country. He was
Okay.
the highest paid hourly worker for General Motors in its history before he met my mom and sold crystals.
Okay.
So, you know, there's a lot of high level thinking ability in there that's not being applied. And my mom's also incredibly brilliant too. She is much better on the social part. You know, if you got my mom in a room with anyone, she could talk a billionaire into buying her a magic healing machine. She's because she's genuine about it, and
Yes.
she's very good at talking, and she is brilliant in other areas. Okay, so I do have an advantage in those abilities I get from my parents, but with my dad always talking about like our values and stuff, he would tell us stories about times in his life when he'd be in fights. Okay, because he was big on wrestling. My dad was a wrestler in high school back in the 50s or whatever. Because my
Okay.
dad's actually 75 now.
Oh.
He's very old.
Okay.
Yeah, and he would tell it. You know, he's like 64-4 for his high school record, and the only guys he ever lost to were the guys that won the countrywide stuff. You know, so really
Okay.
good people. And he always told the stories about when he would get in fights, and it would always be from the morality side. He's like defending someone or something like that. You know, that's just the way he told the stories. And I don't know if they're true or know if they're bullshit. But as a kid looking up to your dad and him painting that as like a good thing, that is very strongly imprinted on me.
Yes.
Like heavily, heavily. So
Yes.
then I just thought fighting was the coolest thing ever. You know what I mean? It was like I valued that as a core principle. Your ability to fight was important,
Yes.
even though it's not really. But, you know, with my hindsight, adult looking back, it's not. But I was instilled with that for a long time.
Yes.
And that's why I was obsessed with Dragon Ball Z and all the karate movies and, like, you know, the Karate
Yeah.
Kid and the Three Ninjas and shit like that. That was my shit. I was just sprint home from school dangerously, like through roads and stuff, so that I could watch Dragon Ball Z, you know. So when we moved to Michigan, my sister ended up moving up with us after the first like 6 months of us being up there. First, we went up there. We didn't have a house. We actually, my dad literally took a chainsaw and cut a van in half and removed the top half of the back, and then
Okay.
put these poles. What can I see? So like the arches of poles here. So it was like this fold down camper van now, and it
Okay.
just looked insane because he just put tarp over it. And it was absolutely nuts. I've never in my life seen anything like it still. But that's like the kind of shit my dad he just built stuff all the time. He welded together the sketchiest goat cart in the world for us. I mean, that was actually dangerous. That thing could have just exploded. But that's like how he interacted with us. He was too old to play with us when we were
Yes.
born. You know, his knees were already fucked up. He's fucking
Yeah.
40 something. He's not getting down
Yeah.
on his knees and playing with kids.
No.
But he would like pretend to let me weld stuff with him. And that was like how we had a lot of interaction with our dad. So he would just build shit. So he built the turtle van and
Okay.
drove us to Michigan in it. And then we just camped out for 3 months at this dam up there on Drummond Island. And
Okay.
like my dad would go and he'd be looking for houses that we could rent and stuff like that during the day and just leave us unsupervised at this dam, just me and Bird. And then we would just go like hunt crawfish in the river and boil them. Like literally, we were just like living there for it was actually kind of nuts.
Okay.
We were not supervised at all as kids, by the way.
And
Like,
how old were you like at this time?
I was 10 when we moved to Michigan. I was
Okay.
going into the
Okay.
5th grade. And then,
Okay.
you know, my little brother's a few years younger than me.
Okay.
So, yeah, no, we had absolutely no adult supervision at any point in our lives as a kid, really, because when we lived in California, my parents would hire nannies
Okay.
to watch us, and they couldn't handle us. We would drive them away. Like they would just quit all the time because we were so horrible. And like I would just not listen to them. I would just run off and go on adventures into the mountains where there's mountain lions and bobcats and shit. Because Topanga Canyon is where we grew up in Los Angeles,
I
and
love Topanga. Yep. Mm-hmm.
you understand it's a fucking weird area.
I know
though.
exactly.
It's
where,
a weird
yes.
hippie community almost,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
lot of
Oh, yeah.
money there.
Mm-hmm.
On top of like the other half where there's almost a lot of poverty there, because like
Yes,
all the
it's
Mexicans
very
there were just kind of surviving is what it felt like
like
the
polarity.
Hispanic community. But then you had all the Hollywood actors that would move there because they didn't want to live in Hollywood. So there's like this
Yes.
weird combination of poor and hippie and money. And it all
Yes.
came together. It was actually a very positive community. Like Topanga days where they throw the parades and stuff.
I've
It was
been to
actually
those. Yes.
really cool. And the way you
Yes.
could just like literally just go explore woodland mountain areas, and that was normal. The kids that's just what you did there. So I got a
Yes.
very cool experience as a child there.
That's cool.
That was great until we moved to Michigan, Drummond Island, because, and I say this a lot on a lot of different podcasts, I have mixed feelings towards that area that I moved to, Drummond Island, because the problem is it's a very, it's like a retirement area. It's a tourist
Okay.
area. So you get a lot of people that are older and a lot of people that have a lot of money that move
Okay.
there. And those people are generally not okay with black people. Okay. It's like,
Okay.
that's just kind of how it is. These older people are just freely saying the N-word because there were literally no black people on the island. Not one.
So it's
There was not
normal
a
there.
single person that was a black person that lived on the island. Okay. So when me and my sister and my brother and my dad moved there, the kids had never seen one before. They'd only seen them on TV, and they'd only heard their parents talking shit about Democrats and liberals and, you know, minorities and stuff like that. So they would just be kind of openly racist towards my sister at times, and I would get in fights because of that, and I just grew to hate everyone around me. So it became a very hostile environment immediately.
Yes.
And I did not learn how to fight yet. I had not learned anything. My dad couldn't teach me any wrestling because he was just too old. He couldn't do it. And what happened was my parents ended up getting divorced shortly after we moved up there. And after a lot of really crazy shit, my mom moved to Hawaii, and she started fighting for custody of me and Bird. She ended up getting a joint custody kind of deal where she got us in the summers.
Okay.
And I had already gotten in a few fights at school now because I was in the 6th grade. And the way that works on Drummond Island is Drummond Island doesn't have a middle school and up. So when you go into the 7th grade, they bus you over to Detour Village. You have to get on a bus, or you have to get on the ferry boat and take that across to the school. And so the school district is really like 3 different areas combined into one. It's got a preschool, an elementary, a kindergarten, a middle school, and high school. It's all in one building. And in the lower grades, like 1 through 5, they're combined classes where it's like 4th and 5th grade are in one room at the same time. That's how small it is. My graduating class had 12 people, and like 2 of them were foreign exchange students, so they don't even fucking count.
Yeah,
really, that's how small it is, though. And then we didn't have a lot of our own sports teams because we didn't have enough people. So like for our football team, they would bus us over to the closest town, which is Cedarville, which is half an hour drive away. And then we were part of their team for that. So there's no wrestling, obviously. There was nothing that no real combat sports or anything I cared about.
Yeah.
And so like we actually lived in Detour Village for 2 years before we moved to Drummond Island.
Okay.
And so I had no interaction with the Drummond Island kids, and the Detour kids were a little bit less openly racist. It was actually a culture shift between just the mainland and the island. The island is only 1 mile off, but the people in Detour Village were not the same. A lot of them were it wasn't the same old money type deal. It wasn't the same, because they're actually a little more connected. They don't live on a fucking island.
Yeah.
And then as soon as when I was going into the 7th grade, I was gonna have to deal with these kids no matter what, because they were either gonna start getting bussed over now to Detour, or because I ended up moving there, so then I had to get bussed over with them. But that was my first interaction with them, and they was full on racist, full on just anti-intellectual, the stupidest fucking people I had ever met so far. They just like, and it was pervasive. All they wanted to do was do drugs. All they wanted to do was drink and party. All they wanted to do was like this, in my opinion, the dumbest shit. Like I hated it all the time. I hated these people. And I started getting into fights, and I didn't know how to fight yet. When I was in the 6th grade, I got into a fist fight after school, and I got punched in the nose, got my nose broken. I didn't win the fight.
Yeah.
And I had always thought I would just be able to win the fight. I didn't have any actual context, and I'd never trained. But in my head, I would block a punch, and I would, like karate.
Yeah.
Like karate's going to work. You don't know that things aren't going to work until you actually fight.
It's true.
So my first summer in Hawaii was in the 7th grade. I just moved to Drummond Island, and I got shipped out to Hawaii for the summer. And then my mom made me go to a judo class.
Okay.
She was like, because I was angry. I was so angry and having so many social problems, and I hated everyone around me so much for a lot of different reasons that the court actually was ordering me to go to therapy at that point.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was, I really just had I was an angsty fuck. I had so much rage.
Well, and you had a lot of shit.
I had a lot of stuff going on. I had reasons, but
yeah.
I also didn't have a lot of context for life yet. And my mom made me go to a judo class, and there was no one at the class except for a 300-pound Samoan black belt. There was this old lady. Okay. She was like in her 40s, very small. And then there was a 75-year-old Japanese red belt.
Okay.
His name was Hondo. And that was it. That was the whole class for the summer. It was just us. So I basically got private lessons for the whole summer, and I had to learn my first throws on a 300-pound Samoan guy as a 13-year-old kid. And then they were like telling me shit at first, like, yeah, you're not use your hips, it's leverage. And I'm looking at this fucking guy. And literally he's 300 pounds. He's fucking massive.
You're like,
and I'm like, how in the fuck am I supposed to lift him up? And then the little Japanese guy, he was short. He was like 5 foot.
Yeah, really trying to squat all down for your Sanagi.
And he would just pick this 300-pound guy up and throw him. You know what I mean? And I was like, holy fuck. I'd never felt anyone like that powerful, because that's how long he'd been doing it since he was 5, and he learned in Japan, where they are very, very good at it.
Yes.
That was actually my introduction to martial arts. I had a very good, solid introduction to judo, where I got the emphasis correct on footwork and hips and leverage and everything like that.
Yes.
So when I went back after that summer, I thought everything was in the gi still. Like it was all gi judo. Yes. And then my dad found a guy that was actually teaching judo on Drummond Island, but it wasn't really judo. Okay. And I got excited. I was like, fuck yeah. I want to do it. And, my dad was like, okay, it's going to be here. It's being run out of his living room. It's $20 a class. And it was like once a week or twice a week or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I showed up in my gi, real proper, ready to learn more traditional judo. And it was like a bunch of the kids I fucking hated. It was all no-gi, and it was like in this guy's living room, and there was a ceiling fan over the mats, and there were holes in the wall where kids had gone through. And I'm serious. It was like, what? and it was nothing at all like my traditional judo experience. But I knew I hated these fucking kids. and I would die before I would lose to them ever.
Yes.
So I was just like a honey badger. Like it didn't
Yeah.
matter. You could put me in an arm bar and I would get out of it. You could if you couldn't break my arm, you couldn't tap me. And as you know, the kids, they didn't have enough skill to actually hurt me. So they couldn't do anything to me. I didn't lose a single round in any position ever because I was so aggressive. Like the honey badger mentality has been a lifelong thing for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I actually ended up making all the kids quit. Every single one of them quit coming.
They were like, forget it.
Because I was out for fucking blood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was serious for me. I already was like obsessed with it. It mattered to me more than anything.
Yes.
Being good at this and winning and being able to fight. That was it. My brain was already hyper fixated on it from 13.
Yes.
And the guy who ran the class, his name was Mike Ogden. He's a black belt in judo, and he's competed at high levels in judo. He didn't like win the worlds at judo or anything, but he's been around for a long time. He was on the Olympic team at one point, I think.
Okay.
And he said he's good at judo, but like it was a no-gi grappling class.
Okay.
You know, so we just did like just no-gi grappling. So like I kind of learned how to do a double leg, but it was like from the judo perspective almost, where it's like I don't think they really understood a lot of the grappling mechanics that make like a D1 level double leg almost, you know?
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
judo has really simple nawaza.
Yes.
I mean, it's basic. It's
yeah,
simple.
very basic.
It's embarrassing from a jiu-jitsu standpoint to look at it almost.
Yes.
But it's like, if you're going to get someone who doesn't train, that shit is going to work.
Well, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So, and Mike was a fantastic coach. I really appreciate having him around. And like for a while, like when I started learning high level jiu-jitsu, I kind of had this weird idea that maybe he didn't know as much as I thought he did, but it was just different, you know? And then also I was a lot younger and I wasn't able to pick up a lot of high level technique that he might've been able to show me. So like looking back now, I think he, you know, well, obviously if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing this. So I give him all the credit in the world for that, but he is actually a good coach. And when all the kids quit, he kept working with just me for a while. Okay. So then the way I would keep track of my progress was I would watch the clock when I'm rolling with him and how long can I survive before he would tap me as a 13 or 14-year-old kid, you know?
Yes.
And that was my mark of progress. You know, I got to where it took him half an hour to tap me one time and I was like, haha,
nice.
You know, but that's literally how I kept track about it. We didn't really do normal rounds. So I've never had a traditional introduction to anything in jiu-jitsu or culture wise or anything like that. And then the class ended up dying off after a while. And then there was like a year gap. And then he restarted the class, not in his living room anymore, but he got the town hall on Drummond Island to let him move his mats into the basement there. Okay. And they were just like throw down mats where you Velcro them together.
Okay.
And then you pick them up after you're done and you put them up against the wall somewhere. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm not sure they ever got washed more than twice. Or 3 times. That's why I think I'm immune to staph. Actually,
you're like I'm like
I've never had I've never had staph, and I've been on some disgusting mats in my life. My whole life has been on like dirty, fucked up mats.
Yeah,
that's why Daisy Fresh never looked weird to me. I've never been like conditioned to give a fuck about that kind of stuff like a lot of other people have.
Yes.
Because that's not. I put down cardboard at one point in my life in a weight room, and I was rolling on that.
Yeah,
I just didn't care. So he restarted the class in the town hall basement. Okay. And now I think I'm 15 and I'm a little bit bigger and I'm starting to lift weights and I'm starting to like develop a little bit of muscle. And I still was like, I will fucking die before I lose to anything or quit. Or you couldn't, I would never stop. I was the kid that you could literally work me to death and I would just keep going. So I just needed to channel it and have an outlet.
Yes.
Okay. But part of that was like, that was an unhealthy mentality. It was a little toxic because I got put in a triangle choke one time. I had a training partner who was really lanky named Justin.
Okay.
And he was like the kind of person, he would fit in fantastic at 10th Planet. He was actually really tall. He could put his legs behind his head and he wasn't even an athlete really. He was just one of those crazy, hyper flexible, lanky guys.
Yeah. And
then after training for him, like he stuck around on and off for like a year, maybe 2 years even. And he put me in a triangle choke one time and locked it up fully. And I bust blood vessels in my eye. And I got out and he was like, dude, what the fuck, man? And I was like, what? I didn't have to tap. But you see, like that wasn't right.
Yeah.
It actually was fucking me up.
Yeah.
But that's how my mentality was. So it was both beneficial for me getting better and extremely unhealthy and toxic at the same time.
Yes.
So now we're back in the town hall basement. Now there's some seniors from the high school coming in and, you know, I'm still 15. I think I'm in the 8th grade. Maybe I'm a freshman now. And then I'm like fucking running through them too. You know, I used to like put people in closed guard and get arm triangles from closed guard and sweep them and tap them.
Nice.
Like I had a lot of weird shit that I did that
Okay.
It obviously would not work now against people that train, but none of us knew anything. I was never going against people that really knew how to grapple. None of
Okay.
my ever, only my coach, and that was it. I just always was grappling against people that were really strong, but
Okay.
not people that knew how grappling.
Okay.
And it got to the point like, okay, that everyone died off again. So people just stopped coming because there's not a lot of interest in grappling and fighting up there. Honestly, everyone thinks they can fight on the island. Everyone is ready to fight. They get in a lot of fights, but they can't understand that they have to training. If you go against someone that knows what they're doing, they are going to fuck you up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
they would come in and I would just destroy them, and then they just wouldn't come back. And then it got to the point where my instructor would go to the bar in the island sometimes, and he'd be like, dude, I got a 16-year-old kid, and I bet you he can fuck you up. And they're like, these are like 30-year-old beer-bellied strong dudes that just lift logs all day type strong. So, I mean, really actually strong, not like weightlifting strong.
Like legit strong, functional.
The kind of guy that if he grabbed you could hurt you, you know?
Yes, yes.
And they're like, no, you don't. He's like, all right, $20. Come Thursday at 5. If you can beat him, you know, I'll give you another 20. And that's how I got training partners actually for a while. That I'm not even joking.
I mean, hey, you got when you got to get what you can when there's not, you know, big fish, small pond kind of deal going on up there.
And then my instructor Mike was getting a little bit older, and he was starting to get plagued with injuries. He was stringing a bow one time, and the string snapped and came across his eye like this. Didn't destroy his eye, but he had to take time off for that.
Yeah.
One time I tried to armbar him as hard as I physically could, because that's how I did everything. Actually, that's why I was able to tap black belts as a white belt, because everything I did, if I thought this is what you're supposed to do in this situation, I would do it with full confidence and full power and full speed.
Yes.
And that's a level of dedication to a move that people don't reach even in jiu-jitsu very often.
Yes.
You know, it's just a mentality.
You're just going to break it. You're going to just get it done.
It's mine. This is what I'm supposed to do here. I don't have to pause and hesitate and think, oh, it might not work on you. I will just autistically send it at you. And it works. That's actually works.
Yes.
So, but one time I was kicking over for an armbar and I healed him in the eye very hard. And he was like, fuck, I got to stop. That was messed up. And then he went home and blew his nose in it. And I had shattered his orbital.
Oh.
So he took time off for that too. And then the class would die off. And then he would feel better. We'd come back. And I'm trying to get the kids from my high school to come and train. And I'm like begging them. And I'm like, I'll give you a ride, because now I have like the sketchiest car in the world. But it's a car and it does run. No, I'll tell you about the car in a second. But it was actually probably shouldn't have been legal. It wasn't legal, actually. 100%. There's no way it was. So, and then I could get some of them to come sometimes. I trained with this guy named John Robbie for a while, and then he would stop. He would get hurt, or he would just not interested. No one was ever consistent. I could never keep training partners. And then if Mike was hurt, there would be no class.
Yeah.
And he would try to come and, you know, roll with me. And now I'm getting too athletic. And now I'm starting to actually get a little bit of an ego, because I'm getting to the point where I've been tapped out in years almost now. And it's not because I'm good, which I was not aware of. It was because everyone's I was training with was not very good, or Mike was not able to train enough to be sharp enough to kind of like handle me. And I was just too physically athletic, and too scrambly and too fast. I was as fast as Jacob Borneman with full send confidence. So he got injured again. He actually, after that, he broke his neck in an accident. Motorcycle accident. It ended up slipping off a curve because it was slippery, and he just went straight into a tree. And he woke up with a broken neck, and he didn't know. And he had to go to the hospital, and they're like, how the fuck are you moving? Your neck is broken.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, now the class is actually fucking done. So I tried to teach the class, because I wasn't going to just stop training.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like 16 or 17. So I took the mats, and I talked the school into letting me open the class at the school for like $10 a month for the kids. And I was just trying to keep myself training. And the only way I could train is by teaching other people, so I could have training partners.
Yes.
That's how dedicated I've been to this my entire life.
Makes sense.
And I was able to do that for a while. And then I ended up going to college in the closest college town, Sault Ste. Marie. It's an hour and a half drive, maybe an hour. But if you're on Drummond Island, you have to take the ferry boat. You have to wait in line for the ferry boat. It takes 10 minutes to get across. It's an actual multiple hour process to get to Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah.
And they had Lake Superior State University, and they had a wrestling club that didn't want anything to do with me. There was in the town an MMA club called Superior Combat, and they never actually met up. And then there was a boxing gym in town that was actually an Olympic level boxing gym in the middle of fucking nowhere. His name was Randy McRory and Rob McRory. Okay. So Randy was the dad and Rob was the son, and they'd both boxed since they were 2. And the Olympic boxing team would invite them out to help get their guys ready. That's like the high level they're at.
Yeah.
And I looking back, I actually appreciate the fuck out of that now, because that's hard to find.
Yes.
And I just happened to luck my way into it. But so that's the only reason I went to college at all. I didn't know what I wanted to go for at first. I went for liberal arts undeclared for the first semester. Okay. Because I just wanted to be up there. So I thought I could find people to train with.
Yes.
And I couldn't really. Because I would get all these people. I would be like, hey, 30 people I'd send out text messages to. You guys want to meet up there at 5:00 on this day? And then I would sit there for an hour on the mats on the fucking track area, like just waiting for people. No one would show up. And that happened to me all the time. I was just begging for training partners all the time. I was desperate for training partners, and I wanted good training. I was ready. And so when I couldn't find training partners and ways to improve my jiu-jitsu, I would just go work out as hard as I could.
Makes sense.
And I mean, like to the death. If you told me to do sprints, I would sprint until I died. So everything I had and everything I did, I always did 100% in the literal definition of 100%. I never held anything back. I never hesitated. I never did 50% on a sprint. It was always 100 because I just wanted to be as ready as I could for when I could finally train.
Yes. So that makes sense.
That's why I did it. I just thought to myself, okay, what can I be doing right now to be ready? Like what can I do? What's under my control to get ready?
Yes.
And I always kind of thought to myself back then, what does it, because I was actually getting ready for MMA because I didn't know you could just do professional jiu-jitsu. I didn't know that BJJ was a thing. I didn't know the worlds or the pans, none of it. I didn't know any, I had no context in the world. And I actually at one point got to roll with like a brown belt in jiu-jitsu and a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and they couldn't tap me. And I was like, man, I must be, I obviously should have my black belt. No, I'm serious. That's what I thought. Because I just didn't have any context, and I wasn't rolling with good people. And again, I was just too tough, and I had really good grappling sense. You know what I mean? Like I could just off the cuff stuff and make it work because I could see it in the moment.
Yes.
So I was very hard to handle, but I couldn't pass the black belt's guard. I couldn't do anything to him, but he couldn't tap me. Okay. So that was enough for me because again, I was thinking about MMA. I'm like, oh, I'll just start punching you now, Yes. But I just didn't know.
Yes.
So I ended up doing one MMA fight up in Michigan. And that was actually right before I moved down to Mount Vernon. But I had also done these submission grappling events at, so there was this MMA organization called Mutt MMA.
Okay.
And, once a month they're putting on MMA fights, but they were not I don't blame the guy for running it like this because the area was this is just how you had to do it. Okay. But there were fights that was these two people had an issue at the bar. So now they're going to MMA fight in front of a crowd. You know what I mean? That was how it was. And they would do 2 or 3, 4 MMA fights and then a grappling match. And then the 3 or 4 MMA fights and then a grappling match. So then I was like, sign me the fuck up for these.
Yeah.
When I was 16, I did my first one and I was confident. I was very confident. I was like, I'm going to fucking run through this guy. It's not even going to be hard. I've been training for years now and there's no way anyone's going to be able to handle me. Because in my head, that the amount of time I had been training was what was important. And I was like, well, I've been training for 3 or 4 years now. There's no way this guy has been training that long or whatever. And I hadn't really understood that quality of time is more important than the time,
Yes. Yes.
So I went out there for my first submission match. And the second I got in the cage, I got so nervous. Looking back on this, I literally had tunnel vision. I couldn't see from here out. I couldn't think at all. It was completely gone. Everything was gone. And my mind was absolutely blank. And then I kind of tied up with the guy and I went for a foot trip and it almost worked until he flying armbarred me and broke my arm in half. But I tried to fight out of the armbar while my arm was fully extended for a whole 30 seconds. I'm rolling. It's breaking. I'm stacking him. It's still breaking. And I was so fucked up on adrenaline, I couldn't feel it. And I finally tapped when I started to feel the cartilage ripping.
Oh.
and I started to feel the pop, 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 pop.
Yep.
Then I had to tap, but it still wasn't hurting me, but I knew it was doing damage now. And I had to walk around in a sling with my arm like this for months. So, and all the kids that I hated, you know, I was like, I'm easily going to run through this guy. Like, now they see me come back in a sling and I just got my ass kicked. That was my first experience with having to work for your wins.
Yes.
So then I fucking really started training hard. Okay. And then I did another one and I tapped the guy in 15 seconds. And then I did another one after that and I tapped the guy in 30 seconds. And I did 8 of them, I think, total. And then finally it got to the point where I ended up doing 2 in a night one time because I went against the guy and I tapped him in 15 seconds. And then there was this other professional MMA fighter who tapped his guy in like 30 seconds. And then the promoter was like, do you want to go in to get to him? And I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. And he's like, okay, cool. By the way, he's a professional MMA fighter with a record of 27-4. And I was like,
yeah.
Well, I was 16, you know, I was terrified. Because if I heard pro, I didn't realize that there were levels to the pro, you know, like you're a professional. Oh, fuck.
Yes.
And this was probably not good for my ego at the time, but I beat him. He couldn't take me down, so he tried to pull guard, and I fucking jumped to side control on him.
Okay.
And then I mounted him really quick when he bridged, and I put an arm triangle in. And I used to do my arm triangles like this, by the way, like not at all correctly.
Okay.
And then he rolled me, so now I'm in guard, and I tapped him from close guard with the arm triangle.
Okay.
And I was like, I just beat a fucking pro. I'm a god. Like, I'm obviously the best, you know?
Yeah.
And then after that, I went against another professional MMA fighter that was a little bit tougher, and we ended up drawing because he just like, I ended up on my back in close guard, and he took me and walked me up against the cage, and then just fucking pummeled me with shoulders, and I couldn't do any jiu-jitsu off my back because now I'm hunched over and I didn't really know what to do. Yeah, I had no idea what to do. Yeah. But if you didn't tap each other, it was a draw. But I probably would, I would have lost that if it was like a different kind of match.
Yeah.
So then I was also kind of looking at it like, okay, I just tapped a pro, and then that pro couldn't tap me or do anything to me. Still a god, you know. So it's like that was it just had a different look on everything back then.
Mm-hmm.
I also had my first experience with getting genuinely slammed in those cage matches because I went against a guy that was like 6'3" one time, and I jumped into a triangle on him, and I was like holding my shin. I hadn't had it locked up fully yet, but it was there. And then he picked me up and then up and then up over his head. And I remember looking around, and 6'3" is very high.
Yes.
And I just like looked down, and I just grabbed my shin and gripped my teeth and closed my eyes, and he slammed me for real. And when he slammed me, I just pulled my shin in so I could lock the triangle up, and then I just squeezed. And the funny thing is, neither of us were breathing at that point.
Yeah.
Because I had the wind knocked out of me for real. If I didn't lock the triangle up, I was in trouble.
Yeah. And
after that, I learned to not let them pick me up by hooking their leg, you know? So like losses should be experience gain for you.
Absolutely.
So I did my one MMA fight. And thank God, the MMA team in Mount Vernon, when I say team, it was run by one guy named Joe Nolan, who he actually knows what he's talking about with MMA. He just never consistently showing up. Okay. And he gave me a strategy, and he worked on me with the strategy. He would put gloves on, and I wasn't allowed to have gloves on. He's like, I'm going to punch you. You have to take me down.
Okay.
And he would just beat the fuck out of me and make me go through that and take him down. He made me work my ass off. And then I had my friend Rob McRory from Torque Boxing, the son who he was a little older than me. He had already done like 30 MMA fights, and he wrestled at a high level, and he just didn't know any submissions or judo, like no real ground stuff. And that was like, I was known locally in the area as kind of the king of the ground stuff.
Okay.
Because none of the guys up there knew anything. I was the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, essentially. And then I thought I was not the one-eyed king. I thought I knew what I was doing.
Yes.
So I ended up, I won the fight. And then shortly after that, like I had already met Heath Pedigo at that point in my life, because the Rob McRory and from Torque Boxing and all them, they invited my coach, Mike Ogden, down to help get some of their guys ready for some MMA fights that were being put on in the area. You know, they had the boxing, but they needed the judo. They needed the grappling, the submissions.
Yes. So
I was 17 or 16, and Mike brought me with him. And then the other kid that would train with us sometimes, John Robbie. And then, you know, they were in a gymnasium, actually, just like a high school gym. It was an Olympic level training in a high school gym.
Okay.
And Yeah, that's the area. That's how weird that area is.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I didn't know that that was weird, you know? So I show up and me and Mike are kind of working with some of the guys and I'm showing them really simple stuff like, listen, if you're in closed guard, don't reach through their legs while you're on the mat with one arm. They'll triangle you.
Yeah.
And that was like for people,
Really?
that's
Wow.
how bad the grappling was.
Like
And
the
then I was like,
concepts.
we did some live rolls and I was tapping them all. And I used to play rubber guard and lockdown actually, because I had Eddie Bravo's DVD back then because my instructor
Okay.
Mike had it. I still have it actually. And I thought Eddie Bravo was a god, and there was no YouTube, there was no nowhere you could really just go and find matches. We're talking like 2011.
Yes.
People were still making books about
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
So and I watching Eddie Bravo roll in his DVDs, I'm like, man, he's really good. And he's doing stuff I can't do. He's obviously he's one of the best, right? And he
Yeah.
tapped, who's the fuck, Gracie? Yeah, he's the man. I just thought Eddie Bravo was like, I thought he invented the omoplata
Okay.
because I learned how to do an omoplata from Eddie Bravo's rubber guard DVD.
Makes sense. So you were just like, so that's just, it's just 1 + 1 = 2. So that's just,
Yeah, but I would play lockdown and stuff all the time. And so when I'm working with all the MMA guys down there, Mike at one point goes over and he's talking to these two guys. They're both bald. One of them's a little skinnier and the other one's just buffer than fuck. Okay.
Okay.
It was Heath Pedigo, the small skinny guy, back when he was because Heath used to compete at like 140.
Okay.
There's videos of he's like 11-0 in the old school MMA scene with hook and shoot. I mean, like Pride days. And there's videos existing online right now of him doing insane shit in live matches against good guys. One of them, the guy pulled guard and he grabbed both their ankles and he spun him and picked him off the ground. And then he dove like a helicopter spinning him in a circle in the cage. And then he dove into a heel hook and tapped him.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, no, Heath used to be super fucking athletic. He used to do incredible shit.
That's cool.
Two people in MMA, and he was self-taught. So I didn't know anything about that. Mike Ogden was talking to these guys, and I'm still working with the MMA guys. Mike comes back. He's like, hey, you need to roll with these two. And I was like, okay, I'll get him for you, coach. I got this. And I went with the big guy first. And, I ended up getting in half guard and lockdown, and I couldn't sweep him. And he's just squeezing my head for the whole round. And it's funny because his name is Wild Circe. He was actually the reason I was going to move into a gym. Because I didn't stay in contact with Heath, but I stayed in contact with Wild.
Okay.
And Wild was telling me you need to get out of the area. You need to come out and experience the world. I'm going to be traveling around all summer. Wild is like a gypsy.
Okay.
I mean, literally, all he did was travel and do art.
With that
and that's how he made all his money.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're going to come, I'll bring you with me. We'll just go train at different gyms all the time. And that my dream at the time was like, I was so desperate for training partners.
Yeah.
I was like, I just wanted to live in a gym.
Okay.
And I just want to be able to train full time. That was it. That was my literal dream.
Yeah.
Like if you ask me, what is your life goal? What's your dream? It would be, I want to be able to live in a gym and just train all the time. This is all I like to do. This is all I care about. Ironic, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
So I stay in contact with Wild, and he's the person who put the seed in my head that I can just go out into the world and go find somewhere to train instead, or I can go move into a gym, or I can do that because it wasn't even an option for me. I didn't think I could do that.
Yeah.
There was actually an opportunity that I missed earlier on in my life because I was 17 and I wasn't ready for it. So I did one of those submission matches, and it was actually the night that I tapped out the pro and the kid in 30 seconds, both of them back to back. And afterwards, these two guys approached me in the crowd. Okay. And they're like, hey, can we talk to you for a second? This is important. We want to make you an offer, and I'm 17, I'm a kid and I have no life experience. I don't know what I want to do. I'm impressioned like I'm supposed to go to college. Yes. That's what they tell you.
Yes.
So these guys pulled me aside and they said, look, we work for, it was one of the high level organizations the UFC had just bought. Okay. So it went UFC and then this organization.
Okay.
Okay. And they said, we are working for Dana White and we're trying to fill the brackets in this division. And we want to take you and move you down to train full time with Forrest Griffin. We think you're doing the right stuff. You have potential. Forrest Griffin needs training partners. What do you say? And then I was like, college, maybe. I'm not really sure. And then my coach saw that I was like getting kind of like strong armed almost. I looked uncomfortable. I didn't know what to say or do. So he came over and started talking to them and asking them real questions like, is there money involved in this? What's going on? He was looking out for me.
Yes.
But because I didn't give them a solid yes, they just ghosted me and I never heard from them ever again. So that was me. That was also my first experience not jumping on an opportunity.
Yes.
Because my life could have been completely different. I would have been good at MMA. I had the tool set already. I had the right mental state, everything. But that would have been different. I would have lived a literally different life.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything happens the way it's supposed to, you know?
Well, I don't care about that. But that's just how it happened.
Yes. Yes.
So then I'm rolling with Wild, and I put him in lockdown, and I hold him there for 5 minutes, and he said, "Fuck this lockdown pussy shit." And I was like, "All right, well, you couldn't pass me, bitch."
Yeah.
And then I go with Heath, and Heath is small, and I'm not that small. I'm 170, kind of shredded. I got actually my high school let me just lift weights for an hour every day. I didn't have to go to the health class my junior and senior year. The principal actually let me just do all the work for the whole class and get it done in the first month, because they have the whole curriculum. I just did it and got it out of the way.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
Then she would let me go lift weights during lunch, and she would let me go lift weights during that hour. So then I was able to stick to a bodybuilding program for 2 years straight without missing a day. And I had a professional bodybuilder give me the program. So I got introduced to high level weightlifting really early.
Okay.
And that's the reason I don't look like Bird.
Okay.
Honestly, literally, I think I'd have the same. He'd be taller always, unfortunately, but I probably would have been kind of gangly like him. Bird's not very big,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if I hadn't lifted weights, that's what I would look like, I think.
Yes.
So now I roll with Heath. Okay. And he taps me the first time, gets me in closed guard and triangles me. And I'm like, I know not to let someone do that. Fuck, I just shouldn't have left my arm there. And then he does it again, though. And then he gets on my back and chokes me. And then he fucking, he's actually just kind of fucking me up now. And he's just good. He's just incredibly good. And I'd never rolled with someone who was actually good at jiu-jitsu. Okay. It got to the point he's like, "Do you want to try starting north-south?" And I was like, "Fuck you." But also, yes. Yeah. And then he kipped up onto my back and put his hooks in and choked me. And I was like, God fucking damn it. I either suck or he's a god.
Yeah.
Because there's only two ways your ego can really accept things like that. You can accept the correct way to look at it is like, okay, I have a lot of room for improvement.
Yes.
And these are all the things that happen because I made a bunch of mistakes, or it's because the other guy's really fucking good. And that's the way a lot of people go, because that's easier on their mental health almost, but it's not better for their acceleration and skill gain.
That's true.
So he fucked me up, and then I went back to not getting tapped out by anyone and being the local hero. So then I went to college and did all that, and I actually ended up taking a semester off because I was not really built for college back then. I had severe untreated ADHD, on top of being bipolar.
Yep.
And I've always had issues balancing things in my life. So I was not good at going to class consistently. And I've always just been able to study and ace every test in a week because I'm smart.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between being smart and being disciplined.
Yes. And
I was not disciplined for school. So I ended up going after my semester off. So I did a semester there, and I took a semester off. I did a year, and then I took a semester off, and then I went back for a semester, and I went back under sports medicine, athletic training. And it's like, I can just do that. I want to learn all this stuff myself because I'm going to be in the UFC, and this is all going to be personally beneficial for me to know.
Yes.
And it was funny because I didn't waste my time. The internet had forums in that time, and I just constantly was looking up how to train better. How do you lift correctly? How do you increase your fast twitch muscle gain? And I learned actually how to do everything right before going to college for it. And then college reinforced it because I was already doing the right stuff.
That's nice.
So that actually helped me a lot. I've always been able to come up with my own workout routines. I've always been able to come up with my own conditioning with that framework of established knowledge already.
Yes.
So I went back to college for the semester. Near the end of the semester, my friend Rob, I do my MMA fight. And then a month later, Rob's like, hey, Heath called me, because him and Heath are friends. It was actually Heath's show. Heath was in Michigan only to put on that MMA show the guys were getting ready for.
Okay.
And he asked me if I wanted to move down to Mount Vernon. And I had gone down to Mount Vernon once already, because Heath put on another MMA show in Mount Vernon. And he called my friend Rob, and he asked if he had anyone that wanted to fight on the show. And I was like, I do. And then we had 2 other people that were supposed to come with us and fight. So 5 of us went down to Mount Vernon, and all of the fights actually ended up falling through, except for one. And that guy went against Miguel Lisboa from Heath's team at the time, who he is actually one of the most athletic people I've ever trained with in the most ridiculous way. He could bridge you 5 foot off the ground. Like his bridge was crazy. His flexibility was crazy and he was powerful. He had, I don't even like this word. And I genuinely try to avoid it, but he was recharge strength personified. Like he was just insane about being strong and flexible and like cat-like almost.
Okay.
And then he pulled side control in an MMA fight against my buddy. And then armbarred my buddy from side control. Like, I was like, what the fuck, man? And I was like, man, Heath's guys are fucking incredible. And I watched all those guys just run through everyone on the show. And, you know, I got to train with some of them there and watch the stuff they were doing. And I was like watching them do moves I had never seen before.
Yeah.
And just like trying to sear it into my memory so I could go home and do it. That's just how I operated. I wanted to learn.
Yes.
And Mount Vernon had a Panda Express. That's not a joke. I found out
Express is amazing.
I found out they opened at 10:30 and I was there at 10:30 every day. I was in Mount Vernon. So that was interesting for me. Like I was already addicted to Panda. I just didn't have access to Panda. Michigan doesn't have Panda Express.
Okay.
You got to go south for that. And my fight fell through. And then they tried to put me against a guy who had 20 plus MMA fights. And then my coach, you know, my buddy Rob, who was kind of like my MMA guy and my MMA coach, you know, he was teaching me how to box and everything. And he was like looking out for me. He was like, no, we're not doing that. Cause that would have been my second MMA fight.
Yeah.
Against a guy that had 20 plus MMA fights. And the guy was functionally, he was bad, but that doesn't change anything. You know, it definitely made the right call not doing the fight. But I essentially drove all the way down to Mount Vernon. And it was 11 hours for nothing. I didn't get to fight. But now I knew Mount Vernon. Now I knew they had a Panda Express and I knew what the gym was and I knew the environment. And when I walked into the gym, there was medals all over the wall. And it wasn't just Heath's medals. They were like IBJJF medals from Pans and Worlds everywhere from white and blue belt. But there were only white and blue belts on the team because Heath was a blue belt. And yeah, no, Heath was a blue belt. And that's what a lot of people don't realize that. Everything he was showing us, he self-taught or we kind of figured out as a team. But like he was incredible about identifying key details that make the difference in every position.
Yes.
And staying up to date on new stuff coming out. Because in 2011, Spider Guard was new. Barambolos were still new. And people in the jiu-jitsu community were against using them in tournaments and using them in training. They thought this fucking shit doesn't work. This isn't jiu-jitsu is what they would say.
Yeah.
And we just didn't have that stigma. So we practiced Spider Guard and X Guard and single X and everything.
Yeah.
And it helped us a lot. Absolutely. And again, Heath showed variations on stuff that are not standard. That I still like our Kimura trap system we use. I don't think that's what everyone else is using. I learned it as the Kimura trap though from Heath. It was all from Heath. So we actually had, in some ways we were a little bit technically behind in areas, but in some ways we were actually technically ahead of people. So it was like a nice little
outside of the box.
Exactly. Everything was unconventional almost.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and then Heath is brilliant at breaking down details and breaking down film. And then I was able to value that and do it myself later on. So, but going back, Heath says, you want to move in the gym. This is my buddy Rob talking to me. And I said, let me talk to Heath. What's his number? You know, because I stayed in contact with Wild, but not Heath. Yes. So first I called Wild and I was like, hey, I just heard Heath wants me to move in the gym. What do you think I should do? And he's like, well, what do you want to do in life? You know, and I was like, this is all I want to do.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, Heath's a good guy. I think you should go. Because they did the gypsy traveling together a lot of the time, you know? Yeah. So I talked to Heath on the phone, and then I've definitely told this story 100 times, but it is a good, like, because this is the best sales pitch I've ever got for anything. And it was with the idea that he didn't give a fuck if I actually came down, because no one ever actually comes down back then. It was like people say they want to do stuff and they're like, yeah, I want to do this. I'm going to do it. And then they just don't do things. We've had 100 people that are like, yeah, this is what I want to do, but they don't show up.
Yep.
You know, so he actually didn't think I was really going to come. So, and he's also telling me all this with that in mind.
Okay.
So he's not genuinely trying to convince me. I mean, he is, but he expects me not to come still. Okay. So he said, this conversation kind of started out like this. He said, look, Andrew, I want to tell you some things, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. Okay. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but you fucking suck at jiu-jitsu. I was like, I don't know about that. That seems a little harsh, but you did tap me a bunch when we rolled. You obviously are better than me. So, okay. Yeah. I mean, I didn't argue it, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
He said, you fucking suck at jiu-jitsu. having success against local guys up there, but everyone up there is just bad, and you don't understand that. When was the last time anyone taught you anything up there? And it had been years since I had learned anything new to me. So when I got new information being put into my brain, it was like a sponge. I was ready for it.
Yeah.
So he said, what's going to happen is you're going to do MMA fights up there. You're going to, you work harder than anyone, you know, because I did genuinely. And he's like, you clearly work incredibly hard and you're good at this and you're naturally good. So you're going to have your first 10 fights up there. You're going to breeze through these guys. Then this is what's going to happen. You're going to be 10-0. And now you're going to get put up against a real monster. And they're going to fuck you up. They're going to break you. They're going to hurt you. And then you're going to lose every fight after that because you'll only get to go against those guys. And your career is going to be over. Okay? Which is actually what would have happened. Yeah. 100%. I did not have the knowledge or the skills. I had the skill, but not the knowledge.
Makes sense.
So he's like, look, here's what I want to make you an offer. Okay? We're going to put together a fight house down here in Mount Vernon. It's going to be all a bunch of guys. Everyone's going to be doing the same thing. You guys are, your only job is to train full time and get ready for MMA fights. Okay. But what I want from you is if you want to come down, you have to give me 100% for the first year. And everyone thinks they're doing stuff at 100. And this is something I complain about all the time because no one knows how to go 100% on anything. Yeah. I can tell you squeeze Bob the dummy as hard as you possibly can and then watch you do it. And then like, okay, now pinch your left arm and more, and you'll watch it sink another inch in. They thought they were doing 100, but they never are. Yes. I knew how to go 100 though. And so he said, I want you to give me everything you've got for a year, 100%. And everyone thinks they're doing 100% and they're dedicating themselves to something, but then watch what they actually do. They go out and drink. They stay up all night chasing girls. I want you to give me everything. Okay. And if at the end of that year, you don't have any success, okay, or you decide this isn't for you, you will actually be able to just quit and move on with your life and never have to look back and wonder what if. So you'll be ready to do whatever the next thing it is you want to do, but I need you to give me everything. And I was like, oh, I'll be there on Monday. That's what I actually said. So, and I was living in the college dorm. It was 1 week before the end of the semester. And I just went back to Drummond Island. I told my dad, hey, I'm moving to Mount Vernon, Illinois. I'm going to be a full-time fighter. And my dad he was supportive, but he always thought I was going to go a different route. At first I wanted to be an author. Okay. I didn't realize I could be a full-time fighter or anything like that. And reading and writing and rationality is already my main focus kind of. And I always wanted to write. Okay. Because I wanted to give back in the way that books helped me. Yes. Okay. So I was going to go and do that. And then my dad introduced me to this term, starving artist. And he subtly kind of dissuaded me away from that route. And I don't agree with that. I think he shouldn't have done that. I think that was wrong. But he did keep me a little grounded about chasing dreams. Right. So then I went back and told him I'm moving to Mount Vernon. I'm going to fight full time. I'm doing this for real. And he was like, you're an idiot a little bit. And he didn't tell me no. And he didn't like really get on me too much, but he was like, he was on the fence basically. Okay. And I didn't have any money either. I had $0. I had a car because I got lucky when I was living on Drummond Island before I went to college. And I worked a summer job lifting logs in the woods and cutting them, debranching them and splitting them and doing all that for this millionaire that lived on a sub island of Drummond Island. She owned her own island on an island. What? And it was actually my dad's girlfriend. Okay. Her name was Wanda. She was a nice lady. She had some issues with alcohol abuse at some points. And later on that actually is, she died of that actually. That's eventually. Sad. But she was still like really helpful. She was like hiring me to help her brother, who was the caretaker of the island. And they had a wood stove, and that was just what they did. They got all the wood ready for the whole winter. And winter in Michigan, where I was actual winter. I mean, negative 30 was normal. Yes. People think cold is 10 degrees, but negative 30 would be a month plus thing up there. That is actual cold, and that is hurt you cold. Yes. It's dangerous. Your pipes can freeze even though you have the heat on. Yes. So I did that on the summers that like when I was 17, I was old enough now. I could tell my mom, I don't want to go to Hawaii. People disagree with that statement sometimes, but it was a different experience for me a little bit because it was forced. And well, actually to go back a little. Okay. The second and third times I had gone to Hawaii to see my mom, now that I'm starting to get a little bit good at judo, and now that when I went back, the judo class actually had a lot of kids finally. And there were
Okay.
people my age I can train with. And I started to be introduced to the local Hawaiians who hate white people. They hate tourists and they think that
Yes.
they call us haoles.
Okay.
But they don't hate you if you fight.
Okay.
So there would be 30 gangster ass Hawaiians and me. And we would go out in the baseball field down by the gym and we would fist fight in the grass. And I would throw them and tap them. And they're like, they just brought me into the circle.
Yeah.
And then I had one of them named Rudolph, who I became good friends with, and he did MMA fights too. And me and him would take a bus 2 hours to BJ Penn's gym sometimes.
Okay.
And I actually learned I learned how to do a jab at BJ Penn's gym. I learned how to do my first jab and right because there was this old school giant ass Russian dude teaching the class there.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so that was kind of my experience. But now that I'm old enough, I didn't have to go to Hawaii anymore. I can tell the judge I don't want to do it. You can't make a 17-year-old kid do some stuff. So then I got to spend some summers living on the island and doing that. So I saved money, and I was able to get a car, like a good car, for $4,000. It was like a 2007 Toyota something. It was a sports car, a Cavalier, I think it was almost called, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And no, that'd be Chevy Cavalier, but I'll remember the name of the car later. But it only had like 15,000 miles on it, and it was a manual. And the reason it was so cheap was this billionaire bought it for his girlfriend, and then when he died, his wife found out.
Oh,
yeah. So she claimed the car and she abandoned it on the side of the road. She didn't want anything to do with it. And after so long, the dealership was able to claim it, and then they were able to sell it for cheap. But that's all I got. So I had a nice car going to Mount Vernon.
Nice.
And but I also didn't have any money though. So like I'm on Drummond Island now, packing all my shit. I am terrified. I'm partially thinking I'm throwing my life away doing this. I'm having all kinds of second thoughts. Just terrified doing this. And the only reason I was able to drive down there was because my mom actually sent me a couple $100s to get down there.
Okay.
Because I didn't really have a cell phone or anything, and I didn't have gas money, and I didn't know how to to get to Drummond Island or to get to Mount Vernon really. So I was able to get that figured out because of my mom's help. And that's why she's always been actually very supportive of my career. She's been the most supportive, even though like I disagree with her on reality. Yes. That doesn't mean that she's not been extremely helpful, and she's a good person and a good lady.
That's awesome.
So I drive down to Mount Vernon. It's an 11-hour drive. I don't sleep at all the night. I literally don't fall asleep the night before. I'm just too nervous. And by the end of the drive, I've chugged 3 monsters that are, the big fucking cans.
Yeah.
Actually, literally, like the BFCs, I think they used to exist before people started having heart attacks,
Yeah.
And when I got down there, the first thing I actually did was go through the Panda Express drive-thru.
Okay.
But I was so sleep deprived, I actually sideswiped the building a little bit. And a lot of people don't know that because I don't usually tell that, but that happened.
That sucks.
And then I got to, I was like driving to the gym, and I was like trying to shovel the Panda in my mouth, and I was like super sleep deprived. And I actually turned into a one-way road the wrong way, and it was a mess. But finally I get into where the gym is, and it's like 8:30, almost 9 o'clock, and everyone's just finished training because they had a 7 o'clock class. And they're all just sitting around in the gym, shirtless, just joking, telling stories. And I walk in, and they're like, oh, he's actually here. They did not expect me to actually show up. No one planned for it. And it turned out there was no fight house. I ended up just sleeping on the mats. The first night, Heath didn't let me stay in the gym. He brought me back to his house, and I slept on the carpet there. And then from that point on, I was the only guy living in the gym. It was just me.
Okay.
And I had no phone. I had no internet. I literally had nothing. I was just there. All I had all day was like the public library was like a couple blocks away. I would walk to that sometimes. Okay. And I actually started reading Plato for the first time during my first summer in Mount Vernon.
That's awesome.
And then like I got something like my old iPod, and I would like download YouTube videos of Jason Scully showing 50 sweeps in 5 minutes or something like that. And I would just hyperfixate on those. I didn't realize that a lot of those are not practical at all. That didn't matter to me. I just took everything in. And then I had Marcelo Garcia's X-Guard book, which is actually how I originally learned X-Guard. And then I had Saulo Ribeiro's The University of Jiu-Jitsu. So I was just all day between sessions, before sessions, I would do nothing except for get ready for jiu-jitsu and study jiu-jitsu and read the books and watch the videos literally all day. I was dreaming about arm bars. I was finally so immersed in the thing that I'd spent my entire life preparing to be, that I was able to get good very, very fast. Like the first month was horrible, actually, physically. I'd never trained that hard. I'd never been pushed in rolls. I'd never been tapped out consistently. I'd never had any issues.
Yes.
And then it's like I could get side control on Miguel, and then Miguel would just bridge me off and armbar me. And I couldn't stop it. I just was like, I didn't have enough actual knowledge against other good practitioners. And then Heath was the other thing too is like, now I'm in a gi and everyone's grabbing it and I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
My fingers hurt a lot every night. My elbows, I had tendonitis on my elbow from the first submission match I did where the guy broke my arm.
Yeah.
And after each round, I would have to like cradle my arm, and I almost like had to quit almost because I was like, this is horrible. Can I even do this? Am I physically just unable to do this? What's going on?
Yeah.
And I ended up just kind of working through it. And after a month, I went to go do my first tournament, which was a bluegrass in Kentucky. And my little brother was getting ready for his summer break between junior and senior year. So then he took a Greyhound bus from Michigan to Bluegrass, Kentucky, and we met there at the tournament. And then I was a white belt, and I was in the white belt division, and I won, but I was like, I've actually gone back and commented on some of those matches now. You could see I like knew a little bit, but I didn't have anything that was actually good, really.
I think I saw you saying like, you're like, what am I doing with my hands? Like,
yeah, I had no idea how to do anything really, but I was just so athletic and so geared mentally towards being able to just kind of bust shit out.
Yep.
And I was just starting to learn how to drill correctly.
Okay.
Because that was the thing is Heath made us drill more than a lot. And I'd always wanted to do that. Like in Michigan, I would like, let's drill, let me drill, let's move on you for an hour for $20, you know?
Yeah.
So I already wanted to do that. And now I had finally a whole group of people who are on the same exact page as me.
Yes.
And the mentality at my gym was different because I went from like hardcore far right, like Klans members, basically, as the surroundings, to now I'm hanging out with Andy Barb and Gary Hammerski, the older guys on the team. There were actually a lot of Masters competitors back then.
Okay.
And they're still around a little bit, but they were like the guys who kept us in check and taught us life lessons.
Yes.
You know, because our team is genuinely closer than probably any other team out there. And especially back then, it was because we didn't have anything. It was just a bunch of people in a garage, basically, who just wanted to do this. And this was just their dream, you know? We didn't even have a black belt to teach us shit. Rodrigo Vaghi, who's the association we're under, is in St. Louis. It's about an hour away or an hour and a half away. He signed our belts for us so we could do with the IBJJF, but he just left us alone. Like he never interfered with us, which was it was actually the best thing we could ask for because he protected us when we needed it from the IBJJF.
Yeah.
He signed our belts because Heath couldn't, because Heath didn't have belts.
Yes.
He was able to belt Heath up. Then he just didn't care about anything else we did. So we never had any weird shit between cross training and all that. Yeah. He didn't care what we did. Heath doesn't care. So I never understood that you couldn't wear a certain color gi at a certain gym or you had to treat people a certain way.
Super weird
because
to me.
I never was I never came up with that. I never even interacted with it until I was already a blue belt, but I was a good blue belt. I could tap all the black belts I rolled with that blue belt. You know, the only ones I couldn't tap were like Lucas Leitch and Marcelo Mafra because they're world-class black belts and there's a difference there.
Yes.
But you put me against any hobbyist black belt and I just ran a train on them every time. So that was kind of my introduction to jiu-jitsu. And then we ended up getting a new building after the first like 3 or 4 months there. I had already like done some tournaments. Now I did I did 3 tournaments, I think, really. By that point, I did the bluegrass one and I won that and won the white belt open and got $200. And we're like, that's how we lived for the next 2 months on peanut butter and jelly.
Nice.
And then after that, I went and did a Naga. And at the Naga, I was like I said, I still thought I was like ready for my black belt almost. I just still didn't have enough context. I'm like, okay, I just need to learn all this stuff, but I'm still actually that good. Yeah. Which a little bit it was true because, you know, grappling ability sometimes means more than your actual technique. You know, I talk about toughness and reaction time and tenacity.
Yes.
You know, like how hard I will fight to prevent you from getting side control on me.
Yes.
And shit like that. You couldn't hold me down. I couldn't be swept because I would get up.
Yes.
You know, and then again, if I was told to do an X pass chain and if I reach up, I'm going to fly into an armbar, I would drill that 10,000 times. Literally, that's what we did. We did 10,000 reps of everything. And a lot of the guys didn't really do it they did it with me, but I was the only one that was really doing it.
Yes.
You know, So there's a lot of 10,000 drills that even now I try to get all the guys. They think they've done all the foundational work that I've done. So they're confused about why they can't move the way I do, or why they struggle in the gym. They can't grab me. And they're like, well, you're just
But
the best
you've
grip fighter. It's
yeah.
because I did these things though.
Yes.
It's like, but it all sucked. And I wouldn't want to do some of that stuff again, but I consider it essential to building your foundation.
Oh yeah. And now you have muscle memory. Your body just already knows what to do.
Yeah. I never have to stop and
Yeah.
think about stuff that I've
Nope.
done 10,000 reps of. It's just happening already.
Exactly.
And I have much more nuanced views on drilling and skill gain and stuff now, but it was like based on what I was doing that was working.
Yes.
So like I was able to build up my skill gain. I put a lot of research and thought into how to get good at stuff. And I looked for a lot of outside sources on this. Like I read books written by professional chess players. I studied high-level StarCraft meta. I applied a lot of different principles for skill gain, and I just applied it to jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Because getting good at something is universal.
Yes.
So like the way I look at it in jiu-jitsu, there's some things you should do more reps of because they have a small window of opportunity.
Yes.
Where you have to already be hitting it.
Yes.
Okay. And then there's some things you just need grind and pressure. Okay. Yep. So like headquarters, the system I have around passing no-gi there, you can't just rep that position, but you have to rep that position first because mechanically it is hard to do a front pummel.
Yes.
A lot of that stuff is mechanically difficult at first. It's not intuitive. And if you can't do that smoothly, you'll never do it.
Yes.
And then the other half of that is like you have to be pressuring and holding the position and grinding. So that position requires a lot of positional drilling with resistance to get good, to actually get good at. But that's how I've always done it from everywhere. It's a mixture of reps and feedback and adjustments and positional sparring and just drill. I can say that all falls under drilling for me. It's all blanket improvement of something that's a narrow thing. You improve at one area at a time.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I like to do it that way too.
It's just kind of like there's nothing different about jiu-jitsu than any other sport in terms of getting good.
Yep.
Wrestling is the closest we have to actually matching jiu-jitsu because it's grappling.
Yes.
And the wrestlers have it down to a literal science. They know how to take someone brand new and build them up into a professional athlete.
Yes.
And there isn't any reason we can't do the same thing they're doing with just tiny adjustments for jiu-jitsu. So again, I've been fortunate. I've had access to really high level people in my life. And I give a lot of credit for some of my more updated training methodology. Obviously, Heath always had us doing the right stuff, but it's what you need to intuitively understand why you're doing some stuff in order to get the real benefit out of it.
Absolutely.
And I have made adjustments based on this. Like the big change for me was from purple belt on.
Yes.
Okay. Because before purple belt, I just worked harder. That was it. I outworked everyone. There was no one working as hard as me. No kid in Brazil. It didn't exist. I was absolutely the hardest working blue belt in the world. And I was the number one blue belt in the world at one point.
Yes.
But that only takes you so far because you do need to be smart about your training.
Yes. Yes.
And it wasn't until I was a purple belt and I already had some injuries and I hurt my disc in my lower back originally as a purple belt, lifting heavy and not knowing the real thoughts behind it. Okay. And then I started talking to this guy named Bobby Demerit. Bobby Demerit is a very well-known wrestler. He got third in the Olympics. He's lived in the Olympic Village for 23 years is what he told me. Okay. But this was him way past his prime a little bit, but he's still teaching wrestling all the time. And he moved to Mount Vernon to help the high school wrestling team in Mount Vernon. And then he came over and just started helping us on our wrestling days in the mornings, and that's when I finally actually learned how to wrestle. Because I would just, he would show us stuff and I would just take everything he told me. And this is actually something I've been able to do that's helped me a lot in my career to get good at stuff very quickly, is if I don't trust very many sources of knowledge. Okay. Because there's too much bullshit in jiu-jitsu. There's too many people showing stuff that's not actually the correct variation of a technique or without the right emphasis on moves or all of these different stuff. Okay.
Yes.
But I've had access to people that I did trust like that. Everything Heath always showed me, I trusted intrinsically. Okay. Yes. I call it word of God.
Yes.
It's like if these people say do this, you should just do that. You have to understand why still, but I don't have to second guess it or doubt. So I've only had a few sources of that. Anything John Thomas ever told me to do, I would just do that. And then I would do it and figure out systems around it until I had my own systems that were intrinsic and I understood. And you always map your own mental route no matter what people try to teach you, because you're
Yes,
not
yes.
able to do it otherwise if you don't do the work. The work
It's
is
true.
building a mental map. So,
Yes.
you know, and then I had Heath, I had John Thomas, and then I had Bobby Demerit and like Marcelo Garcia. And like I did a lot of film studies and shit, watching people roll. Like you have to, sometimes I had to see something to understand I could do
Yes.
it. I had
Yep.
to see someone do it that fast to realize I was doing it slower than them.
Yep.
And you have to experience that with pressure too. But I didn't have access to a lot of high level players because I very quickly became the best guy at PSF, because the best guy before me, Adam Adcock, he was like the gym hero. He had won the worlds at white belt. He was winning at blue belt. And the only guys he ever lost to were, he lost to Rolando Sampson once.
Okay.
He lost to Edwin Najmi once.
And that's it.
That was it. He was homegrown Mount Vernon, you know, but he took a bunch of time off and I caught up to him, and then I was able to just kind of get ahead of him. And then he kind of just quit forever. Because he also got married around the same time, and then his wife had a kid, and he had a lot of reasons for leaving. But then I didn't have anyone that could beat me anymore. So the problem is, like, I didn't know what real pressure was supposed to feel like until I got invited up to Chicago by Michael Sears, because me and him have been friends since I was a white belt. I actually met Michael Sears because I was a white belt and I jumped into a blue belt division at the second bluegrass that I went to, and they did round robin. Okay.
Okay.
So I was a white belt with my white belt on, and I fucked all the blue belts up and I won the blue belt open. Michael Sears was one of those blue belts, and I tapped him in 15 seconds.
Nice.
So then he went back to Chicago, and he's like, I just ran into this fucking honey badger with a dirty gray gi on it. He fucked everyone up. So he talked about it to people. And it's funny because like they linked that now to me now, you know, so it's just kind of funny how that went. But me and Michael stayed friends, and he invited me to Chicago because he trained under Carlson Gracie in the HQ up there. Marcelo Mafra and Lucas Leitch were coming into town to do like a week camp followed by like a seminar at the end.
Okay.
You know, I got invited up. I had just gotten.
That's awesome.
I had actually just gotten sponsored by Shoyerville, I think, or I hadn't yet, but they sent me my first gi. Nice. So I think it was between the pans at blue belt and the gi and the worlds.
Okay.
And dude, I just, they didn't destroy me, but I felt like I was getting destroyed because I was constantly on the back foot, and nothing I did would work. All this stuff I was really confident in, and I just couldn't do anything to them because of the pressure difference. Put him in spider guard, that's already getting popped off.
Yep.
You know, the pressure from everywhere was something that I just didn't understand until I felt it done to me. And I was like, oh,
yes.
Okay, that's important. I need to work on that now.
Yes.
So and that's also a reason why you guys should stop being pricks and go cross train and experience stuff like this, because you just don't know what you're going to run into and how it's going to affect your career. For me, it was a literal, I've had life-changing little tidbits of knowledge people haven't even meant to give me.
Yes.
Where my brain would fixate on something. I'd go back and be like, this is like my knee slice stuff I got from John Thomas at a seminar that he did, but he also accidentally showed me other stuff that I was able to go back and be like, there was like a secondary chime off. He's like, oh, by the way, and here you do this. And I was like, wait, what?
Like game changer right there.
Yeah. Everything was game changing for me.
Yep,
so, going back, so I did a few tournaments at white belt actually. So I went from white to blue about as fast as you really could feasibly do it, you know? So like I was a white belt. I joined the team very soon before the pans at white belt. I got to do like 3 tournaments. So then I might have trained in the gi for 3 months, I think, before I did the pans at white belt. But I did a blue belt. So I went to a Naga for my second tournament ever.
Okay.
And I just fucked up all the white belts at the bluegrass. So I wanted to see how I could do against I wanted to see how I do with blue belts.
Okay.
So I told Heath I want to do the blue belt division. He's like, okay, no issues there. You know, that's not a big deal. See how you do. If you lose, you lose. You learn. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I went to the guy who was running the tournament, and he was like, cool. Yeah, you can do blue belt. I don't care. But if you're going to do blue belt, you have to do the intermediate no-gi. And I'm like, that's cool. I don't care.
Yeah.
And then he's like, hold on. There's no blue belt signed up. So I'm going to put you in the purple belt division, actually. Now, because you're going to do purple belt, you have to do the expert no-gi. And I was like, I also don't give a fuck. Yeah. And I went against a white belt in the purple belt division who was an MMA guy doing the same thing as me.
Okay.
He did MMA for 15 years. He was stronger than fuck. And I just put him in spider guard and swept him eventually. And like, it was a hard match. It was very hard. Neither of us were actually good. Okay. And then there was one guy in the no-gi who was a black belt, and I just jumped past his guard and mounted him. Okay. And I no-gi Ezekiel'd him.
Nice.
He was a fake black belt though.
Yeah, I was like, how do you know Ezekiel black belt?
He was a literal fake black belt.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
He said afterwards I asked him, because it was just nogi. I said, "Oh, what belt are you?" And he said, "I'm a black belt." And I was like, "Oh shit, I'm a white belt." Like, but I actually know the guy now. He's actually a weird fucking dude who's like a preacher, and he was saying he's a black belt, but he was like a black belt in Hapkido or some fucking insane bullshit martial art.
And just decided,
and just telling everyone he was a black belt. But that didn't matter, because the results went online that said Andrew Wiltse, purple belt winner, expert no-gi winner. Okay. And this is going to matter later. This is going to be relevant. So I did one more tournament. I think I did a bluegrass, and then we went to IBJJ for Chicago the week after that. And I had a hard 5 matches. I won IBJJ for Chicago, and then we went straight to the pans. And then I won the pans. Okay. And I wasn't supposed to win the pans. It was actually, this was back in it's still bad now, but it's much better. But back in the OG IBJJF scene, your team mattered. Your skin color mattered a lot.
Yes.
Your lineage mattered a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
you're not supposed to win if you're a white boy or a non-Brazilian. Yes.
No. Now it's much better. American Jiu-Jitsu. And what I mean by that is Jiu-Jitsu in America. I don't give a fuck at what you call it.
Yes.
Okay. Has gotten significantly better. Okay. So, but before it was Brazilians all coming from Brazil that would just run through everything. Yep. Even at white belt, they were bringing people in.
Yep.
So I went through and I did my first, I think I had 6 matches. So I did my first 5 matches. Some of them were hard, some of them weren't. And now I'm in the finals, and I'm nervous, you know, everyone knows my group rolls pretty tight when we go to tournaments. We're at every 15, 20 of us are at every mat that we have a person going, because that's just how it's supposed to be.
Yes.
Okay. You don't just not show up to support your team, right?
No. Yeah. You have to go. You have to roll deep.
Everyone knows that, but you get high level, and you lose perspective on that.
Yes.
You know, it's like, there's some high level coaches out there from big teams that don't go to those matches anymore. You know what I mean? So that was never us. So we had, we went out there with 9 people. Okay. To go out there, none of us could afford flights. None of us could afford rental cars. It was like all of us guys that are just gym rats. Plus we had, some of the old guys, you know, Andy Barban and them, that were like the voices of sanity, and they kept us grounded and gave us life lessons, and they were just helpful. I like, that's why I'm so supportive of masters competitors. Just being in the gym, going on the trips, because if it wasn't for guys like that, I would have different perspectives on stuff that wouldn't have been as healthy and wouldn't have been as correct. Okay. So in the finals, okay, they stop actually 3 different mats. The refs walk off and come over to watch the white belt finals of the middleweight. Okay. And then the referee who was supposed to ref the mat, he goes and sits down in the chair. He's coaching. It's his son. All right. There's 50 Brazilians in the stands wearing the green soccer shirts and fucking yelling, Gracie, whatever, those chants they do.
Yep.
And then there was just our team. It was like 9 of us, and that was it. So it's just insane that all these refs stopped and came over to watch.
Yes.
Okay, and coach. And the guy's coaching his son now. He's just sitting in the chair. It's a different rep that's also on their team. It was fucked. But we just always knew, you know, if we had to go against a Brazilian, we just had to beat their fucking brains in, because if it was ever close, if they could fuck you in any way, they would.
Oh, absolutely.
And it wouldn't just be on decisions. It would be things like resets, or the Brazilians getting taken down near the yellow. Oh no, better stop the match and start standing again. No points, no advantage. You know, the refs are actually incredibly influential in subtle ways, if they want to be.
Yes.
So am I coming through clear right now? Because right now you're breaking up.
Am I the my signal? I see just
okay. Now if you can see me just fine, I'll just keep
Big Bear signal.
Yeah, there's actually
a billion
tornado warnings going on in my area right now. So
yeah, it's weird. I just saw a little bit of flashing, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's a little sketchy right now, but so I go out there in the finals with this guy. The Brazilians are going absolutely ape shit. And then it's just our 9 people, you know, and Heath wasn't even allowed to coach, by the way, because if you guys pay attention at the pans and the worlds, you know, they have the mat kind of gated off where the coaches can stand. Like, you can't actually go down into that area if you're not a black belt. They won't let you in unless you have the Mendez brothers or someone who sneaks or tells you to let them in, but they would not let us in. They didn't let Heath coach us, and we didn't have a coach other than him. So it was actually just infuriating because Heath had to yell from the stands. And then you'd see the Mendez brothers down there with their 50,000 little child clones
Yes.
and their girlfriends and their girlfriends. And we literally couldn't have our coach us. So that
Yep.
always pissed us off.
Yep.
It wasn't fair. It was literally
Yep.
unfair.
Yeah.
So now I'm going against this guy, and right away I fucking full on honey badger him. I get my first takedown, and I pass his guard. You know, my guys are getting a little louder now. They're starting to pump up. Brazilians are kind of deflating. And then I fucking mount him, and I get on his back. He gets away. I repass him. I ended up beating him 27-0 and tapping him. And by the end, like, my guys were fucking yelling.
Yeah.
We're fucking amped up.
Damn, yeah.
They have deflated, and they are fucking pissed.
Yeah.
They're like, who is this fucking kid? Is he a secret purple belt? Is he a brown belt? Sandbagging at white belt? They literally thought that I was like intentionally going down in belts.
Yes, yes.
Because how else could their guy lose?
Yeah.
That's what they said. There was like, our guy wasn't supposed to lose. Therefore, something was wrong here. I outworked everyone.
Yeah.
And I had a good team, and I had a good coach, and we had the right techniques and the right mentality.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We didn't have a facility that was good. You know, it's just that was the whole point for us. It was just like you can be at any gym anywhere.
Yep.
You can just work your ass off and still be successful.
It's true.
So then after that, I went, you know, because there's like a month and a half or 2 months between the Pans and the Worlds. It's not very long. So I think I might have been a white belt for 5 months in the gi, just learning how to do anything in the gi. And I didn't have a wrestling background, and my judo background was like, I hesitate to even call it a real judo background. You know, like I had no real formal training and no actual knowledge of techniques, and I wasn't actually any good at anything. And I had an adjustment period in the gi where I'm just doing these few tournaments, and then I'm probably going to get my blue belt right away. Right.
Yes.
Because in my head, I'm still thinking I'm like a little better than I was.
Yes.
You know? So I was ready to get my blue belt right away, but you're going to do the tournament to learn how to compete still.
Yes.
So then I went and I did, between the Pans and the Worlds, I went and did an in-house tournament at Rodrigo's, and he put me in the blue belt division there because I just wanted always to challenge myself, you know? And then I won the blue belt division there, and there was like a picture of me, like with my white belt on, you know, with some blue belts around me, holding up like $100, you know?
Nice.
And then I did the second bluegrass tournament at blue belt with a white belt on, and I fucked up Michael Sears, and then I fucked up everyone in the open, you know, because now I'm actually starting to get kind of good.
Yes.
Because now I've had a few months to do 10,000 rep challenges and learn how to do stripping the grips in the gi and how to actually do Torianos and X passes and shit.
Yes.
I didn't know anything about. I didn't know guard passing was a thing.
Yeah.
Because I learned to go into the closed guard and use my knee to pin their knee down.
Okay.
I'm serious. That was my technique.
Like doing like shin staples and stuff like that.
Shit that does not actually work.
Yes.
You cannot do that to people that are decent.
Yes.
Or you can't do that to anyone that sucks even almost, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
So I had to learn from the ground up on everything. I had to remap everything. And then I did, so those were the only tournaments I actually did. I think I did IBJJF Chicago one more time because that was between the Pans and the Worlds. And then I went out to the Worlds. And when I got to the Worlds, when I was supposed to go compete, first off, I sold my car so that me and Bird could afford to go out there. Okay. Also, by the way, we put 9 people in a van and drove to California for this trip. This is just how our team has done things because our guys are poor.
From Illinois?
From Illinois. It was a 32-hour drive.
Yeah, that's long. Yeah.
And it was normal for us.
Yeah.
None of it, we couldn't afford plane tickets than the guys. Yeah. And Heath didn't have money to pay for our stuff. And there was just no actual money or support from the community, like the local Mount Vernon community, nothing.
Yeah.
Obviously, the jiu-jitsu community had no idea who we were. We were just a little local team with a blue belt or a purple belt coach, you know? And we just kind of kept showing up to all the tournaments and winning. And then we climbed our way onto the radar. But when we went up to California for the Worlds, they're calling my name down to the bullpen. I go to walk by, and then the girls from the table see me and recognize me. And they said, "Are you Andrew Wiltse?" And I was like, "Yes."
Yes.
They're like, "Come here. We need to talk to you." They said, "So you're a purple belt and a professional MMA fighter, and you're disqualified, and you're also banned from competing forever."
What?
And I said, "What?" What?
What? Yeah.
And they're like, "Yep, the decision is made. It's final. Have a good day." So then I went and got Heath, and I told him what was going on. I'm in literal shell shock, you know.
Yeah, that's weird.
And my teammates are winning the Worlds. All the people that I'm training with and coming up with, Like Miguel, he won the worlds. We had other guys win the worlds that year at white belt, and I didn't even get to compete. I didn't even get to try. And at that point, everyone was expecting me to win, you know.
Yeah.
And it was like for our team, these little things meant a lot because that's all we had. We
Yeah.
did not have a purple belt on our team. We didn't have any blue belts on our team. It was all white belts and Heath. And then the blue belts we did have were like Derek Featherston, who's a black belt now, one of the old school guys, and then Jason Irwin, but he wasn't really around anymore, you know. So it's like we didn't have any.
Yeah.
We had no adult blue belt competitors at all. We had no adult blue belts at all. So these white belt things were literally the world to us. Okay. And I went and got Heath. And by the way, my mom, who I hadn't seen in years, flew out from Hawaii to come watch this too.
Dang.
Yes. So then Heath comes down. We're talking to the lady and we're like, who can we talk to? Who can we talk to actually find out what's going on or explain what's going on? Okay. And they said, nobody, first off. And then we just stayed until finally it's not the president of the IBJJF because that's fucking Carlinos, right? But it's the next guy down. He's like a short guy, Brazilian. They get him to come over and he's fucking busy. He's running the pans. He's pissed off now that we're taking his time. First off, two fucking white dopey looking dudes are taking up his time to talk about a white belt. Okay. First thing he says to us is, doesn't matter what you say, the decision is final. Okay. And then they pull out this sheet this thick. All right. And he starts flipping through it and he says, okay, the fucking things they had that made them think that at first they saw me after my first MMA fight. Okay. That I won. They said, well, you did a fight here and there's blood. I'm quoting this motherfucker, by the way. He said, because there was blood, it's a professional fight. You're a professional MMA fighter. It was a one amateur fight in a backwards town against a guy who also didn't know anything. So I was like, that's not true. That's not what that is. Like, that was one MMA fight. I didn't know what the fuck. And then they said, well, we also have this Naga you did that says you're a purple belt. Because I bumped up in divisions to try to test myself. And this was insane to me. And I was trying to explain to him, like, dude, this is like local. This is an in-house tournament you're talking about here. Yeah. Because he had that. He had the in-house tournament. And he said, that's proof I'm a blue belt. And then the Naga was proof I'm a purple belt and a professional MMA fighter. And it was so insane and so unfair. And then he said, listen, if you keep talking to me, I'm gonna start banning your entire team and shit. Because Heath is not someone they want to talk to. They would not talk to us because we couldn't speak Portuguese.
Yep.
We didn't have a black belt. And to them, that meant you literally are just not worth their time talking to.
Yes.
And it got bad. This gets worse. So I was actually suspended permanently from the IBJJF.
Oh my gosh.
So we got back from the Worlds. I got my blue belt and I did my blue belt test immediately. And then I started doing different tournaments at blue belts while we're trying to go back and forth with the IBJJF.
Yes, yes.
But they had so many weird stipulations. It was so toxic. They told Heath they would not interact with him at all. Okay, it all had to be through Rodrigo. So they did all these Zoom calls, basically, like group conferences and shit. And Heath could sit there, but they said if he says anything in English, your case is dismissed instantly. And the only reason they're even hearing the case is because Rodrigo Vaghi is one of Hickson's first black belts. He's a 5th degree black belt. Yes. He grew up in Brazil with them. He knows them. He has influence and power.
Okay.
Not Heath.
Okay.
Heath was not allowed to talk. Literally, they told him word for word, if he says anything while he's there on the call, your case is dismissed. Even though Heath's our actual coach. So that's when I said Rodrigo protected us from the IBJJF. If it wasn't for Rodrigo doing this, I wouldn't have even been allowed to compete at the IBJJF anymore.
Yeah.
For nothing, for like the most bullshit and just insane stuff. It was because I beat that. We actually found out the truth about this, by the way. This is a real fact.
Okay.
They actually, me beating that Brazilian kid in the finals is why they did this, because they just couldn't accept that someone outworked him at white belt because he was their sandbagged white belt, essentially.
Yes.
He wasn't supposed to lose.
Yes.
He'd been training since he was 5, you know? So that happened. And it took 6 months for them to finally, actually, Rodrigo just called Carlinos, whoever the president is. He called him on the phone personally and said, I need you to fix this. And he's like, why the fuck are you bothering me about a fucking white belt or a blue belt? I don't give a fuck. Yeah. Don't bother me with this. Unban him or ban him. I don't care. So they unbanned me finally. So that's why I couldn't do the Nogi Pans and the Nogi Worlds right away, because I would have been able to do them instantly at blue belt. Yeah. So instead I did invitationals almost, but like qualifiers. And I did like some
Okay.
5 guys in Chicago. I
Okay.
did Nagas. I did like local tournaments. And actually, that's when I first beat Roberto twice. Was
Okay.
because I couldn't do the IBJJF. So we drove all the way to Texas to do the AGF qualifier.
Okay.
And still, this is how little respect our team got, by the way. So the guy that runs AGF, you know, he had the qualifier. If you win this, you're going to be in the main tournament for $2,000. And we drove to Texas. We drove all day and all night through thunderstorms. So we're going slow. It took us literally 20 hours to get to Texas. And we showed up at the event literally like 15 minutes before it started, before I had to go on and compete. And I hadn't slept yet still. I can't sleep in cars. I had just been up for 30 hours.
Yeah.
And I go out there, there's videos of this. I'm literally staring off into space while I'm tapping people.
Oh, dang.
And the guys are just saying stuff like, oh yeah, Andrew's good. You know, he did some stuff at white belt and a little local stuff at blue belt, but he's going to fucking die to Austin Arende and Roberto Jimenez. They're going to crush him. And then I fucked both of them up. And he was so flabbergasted that he ended up putting both of them in the tournament anyways.
Okay.
Because that's how guaranteed the win he thought they were. And then I tapped all of them at the tournament there too. Like I tapped Roberto, I tapped Damian, Arende. Like I just ran through everyone again. And then it was still just like that. Nothing we ever did mattered, honestly, to people, because nobody had any way to pump our name out. And like I won literally everything at blue belt. Because as soon as I got unbanned, I went and I won the blue belt pans.
Okay.
Well, first I actually just ran the circuit waiting for those. And I like started quadruple golding in Chicago and Atlanta, and anywhere they did a local IBJJF we could go to, I would go in quadruple gold. And I was beating up all the little Brazilian kids that were showing up to these. And I just didn't respect anyone because I knew nothing about the sport, context wise, team names, nothing. It didn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
And then I won the blue belt pans in the gi. And then I beat some guys that were supposed to win my division. They were just like the Orlando Sanchez, a student, but they were like some of the better blue belts at the time. And I beat them like a drumstick. And then Orlando was just like astonished that happened. And I didn't know who Orlando was either. And like I walked off the mat and he grabbed me over the barrier with his big ass bear paws and pulled me back. And Heath wasn't allowed to get down there, so he couldn't help me. And I was like, I'm about to die.
Yeah.
And then he just started, he was really nice, but he's a teddy bear.
Yeah, he is.
He doesn't realize how this will fucking sink you down and shit. So he started asking me like all these questions. Who do you train under? Where's your guys' gym? And I was just telling him that I was just honest answers. I'm like, we're at this little small town in Mount Vernon. We don't have a black belt. My coach is a purple belt. He's actually up there. He's not allowed to come down here. And then he kept asking me like, no, who's your black belt? You know, like it didn't compute that I could win at a big tournament without a black belt or a major black belt teaching me.
Yes.
It wasn't because it wasn't ever happening back then. It didn't exist. There was no one that could do that. You know, I was always the only American on the podium back in that days. So then he was like, just so blown away by it. And I told him me and my little brother both live in the gym. We got a bunch of guys that live in the gym with us. We literally just train all day, every day. This is all I do. This is everything. That he went to Bear from Show Your Roll and told Bear to check us out.
That's cool.
And I had already messaged Show Your Roll at one point, and me and he wrote up a really nice thing trying to get a sponsor because we couldn't afford to go to the trips. I had to miss a bunch of tournaments because we didn't have the money.
Yeah.
And, you know, the way we phrased it was like, look, I know I'm a white belt still, and I've only won the pans and these IBJJFs and stuff. And I know you don't have any real reason to sponsor me, but if you do, I promise you, it will be worth your time. We will make it worth our time. We are going to do this. We are going to make it somewhere. We're going to give everything we have to this. And then they politely told me to fuck off. They were like, we are not looking for to be accepting any more athletes right now. We appreciate your time. They actually, you know, whoever the guy who wrote that was, he was nice, but it was a polite fuck off.
Yes.
And then after I did the pans, and this guy named Bear reached out to me on Facebook, and I was like, Heath, do you know who the fuck this is? His name is Bear. And he said, Bear Pedigo. And I was like, yeah, I think that's it. And he's like, the owner of Show Your Roll. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And that's how that happened. So he said, look, we're impressed by your performance at the pans. Someone put you on our radar. We're going to send you a gi to wear for the Worlds. And if you do well at the Worlds, we can see where we go. So they weren't sponsoring me yet. Okay. But now the Worlds became very important.
Yes. Yes.
And I went and I fucking ran a train on everyone at the Worlds. I just eased. The only hard match I had was the semifinals with a really tough Brazilian guy. I don't remember his name at all, but I haven't seen him again since then either. But he had really good spider guard. And I couldn't pass his spider guard. And at one point we ended up standing back up, and then I flying triangled him.
Nice.
So that I was athletic. So and then I had a really easy match in the finals, and then Bear added me to the roster.
Nice.
And then it's like, this is the first time anyone had ever acknowledged our team. That was it. It was, again, we don't have any anything.
Yeah.
And this is how kind of fucked it was back then. Okay, I'm gonna keep going with this. So then I went and did the Nogi Pans, and I won the Nogi Pans, and I won the Open. Okay, and in the finals of the Open, I went against Matthias Luch. And everyone knows who the fuck he is, right? He is incredible. He is a very successful athlete, a very successful competitor, and I actually like him. He's very friendly.
Yes.
I beat him 28-0 in the finals there. Okay.
Nice.
And then 1 week later, I saw an article on Jiu-Jitsu Times saying, "Is Matthias Luch the best blue belt in the world?" I was like, no. You know what I mean? It's like he was from a big team. And those people from the big teams I kept beating, but because they had the Mendez brothers pumping their name out, you know what I mean? Everything they did, they got community-wide recognition, and it hyperinflated their names.
Yes.
And it didn't matter how many times I beat them or how badly I beat them. It literally didn't matter. Flow grappling didn't exist. No one knew who we were. They were starting to pick up that there was this weird team that had a star and did this when they mauled everyone. And they knew that if you had to go with one of those fucking weirdos from Illinois, they're going to go after you. And you are going to have to take them seriously. Because you may have been able to beat one of our guys, but you were going to lose your next match because you wouldn't be able to walk.
Because you're so tired.
You're so exhausted. So that's what I mean. And we literally grinded our way to that recognition. But I won the Blue Belt Worlds and the Open for Nogi. And then I went back and I won I had to do 2 years at Blue Belt because of the fucking IBGGF.
Yeah.
Okay. So listen, after we won the Nogi Worlds and the Nogi Open, we asked them if I could go to Purple Belt. And they said no. And because of my history with them, they said if he gets his purple belt and competes anywhere with a purple belt, we're going to ban him forever again. They literally threatened me with that. Jeez. So I couldn't even get my purple belt and then go do other tournaments again. We posted that on Facebook back then. And it was the most fucked up, corrupt shit ever, right?
Yeah.
And now at the same time, okay, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about Roberto because I love the kid and he's incredible. But when he was younger and I just beat the fuck out of him. And I was already tapping black belts everywhere I went. And then he did a couple of local Nagas against some really shitty black belts and tapped them. And then he was all over everything. Okay. Yeah. And he was not getting in trouble for it because that's why I got in trouble, because I was competing above my belt rank at local tournaments, trying to push myself.
Yep.
And we were just looking at that like, what the fuck?
The hypocrisy.
What is going on? Like it just seemed so unfair.
Yes.
So then I had to do the whole circuit again, basically at Blue Belt, because I just didn't have the time required. I had to do 2 years. So then I won the Gi Pans again, and then still no one knew who our team was. We did a IBGGF Pro in Atlanta one time, and this is the first time we got on the podium as a team, but they wouldn't let Heath go on the podium.
Okay.
Because he's not a black belt. And we knocked off one of the big three. I don't remember which one it was. It was either Gracie, Baja, Atos, or Checkmat,
Okay.
The ones that are always on the podium.
Yeah.
We knocked them off by getting second place. So they threw a fucking fit. They literally lost their minds, and they brought everyone over, and they're like, he can't get on the podium. He's not a black belt. No. So they were telling us no. And finally, the I think his name is Vince. He's the bald guy, always in the IBGF, always makes sure everything gets done. He's actually, he's really nice. I like him a lot. He finally said, Heath, man, listen, I love what you guys are doing. You guys are like Vikings. You show up and rape and pillage everywhere, and you don't say anything, and you just do your thing. Get on the podium. You deserve it. And otherwise, Heath wouldn't have been able to get on the podium. They weren't going to let him.
Yes.
So the first time we won the novice pans, okay, the reason our white and blue belts are better than most people's is because we just fucking outwork people.
Yeah.
Like our team trains hard as fuck. Our white belts don't respect upper belts. Okay, they don't. If you are a black belt and you come into our room, our blue belts are going to try to beat you.
Yeah.
Genuinely, in a way that a lot of other people won't.
Yes.
Okay, so that translates to tournament ability.
Yes.
because you competing and training are separate skills. But
They are.
if you train how you want to compete and then compete that way, you have a huge advantage. And
Absolutely.
we train to go fast, we train to go hard and push the pace.
Yes.
Okay, and we had pretty decent technique. It wasn't like the Mendez level where some of the stuff like that, there's a little bit better systems out there maybe than what we were doing back in the day, but it was good enough,
Yes.
So we won the white belt novice one year at the Pans, and then Gracie Baja had a fucking group meeting, and they said, "How did we let this happen? Where can we find more points?" They literally did this to us, but they couldn't find enough points. But it's a real thing. The shit is corrupt.
Oh yeah.
And the other way we used to run into issues all the time is they wanted me to lose. So they actually would always stack the bracket against me everywhere. If there was a way to give me the hardest side of the bracket and the best guys in a row, I always had it every single time. Okay. And then because I beat the best guy, I get to cruise through the rest of the division. So my finals matches were never hard because the best guy was the first round.
So
Then
it's just like
flow grappling came out. When I got my purple belt, they started to be a thing now because before it was like Budo videos and shit.
yes.
And then Bear from Shoyerul she tried to just help us out as a team because we had just gotten fucked over by the building owners we were under. So we had the second gym we had, okay, which we moved into, it was an old ambulance hall, and it had 4 rooms, and we made a 5th room. We put 2 guys in a room, and we all trained and lived in there full time, and it was actually a really nice facility. And we were doing rent to own, but we were doing rent to own without a contract because we trusted the person. And he was older. He was like the stepdad of a girlfriend kind of thing,
Okay.
And it's like, you just trust the guy.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, we had these neighbors that moved in and they did this semi-truck repair thing. And they always had semi-trucks coming in and fucking the parking lot up. And they hated that we had all these people parking cars there. They kind of wanted us out. So just out of nowhere, they actually walked into the gym while we were training and they said, "Hey, we just bought the building, guys. By the way, you have about a week to get your shit out." And we're like, "What?" And Heath wasn't even there that day. I had to call him and tell him what happened.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What?" So then he goes to the guy's house to talk to him. And the guy is dying of colon cancer now. Okay. And he said, so Heath's like, "Dude, what the fuck? I've been paying you extra this whole time." He's like, "Well, you don't have a contract." And then he said, "And also, I'm dying of cancer and I'm old. If you aren't going to beat me up, then get the fuck out of my house. I don't care." And Heath's not going to beat up an old dude. So then he just left and there was nothing we could do. We had to find a building in a week to move, or the gym was going to shut down. Yeah. That's why we ended up in a fucking laundromat, by the way. It was a panic. We had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Okay. So then Shoyerul went out of their way to try to help us.
Yeah.
They did a shirt drop for us. They took a picture of the sign of the laundromat and cleaned it up.
Okay.
And it said Daisy Fresh American Jiu-Jitsu. And that's how that happened. That's how that started. Before awesome. That, we were just Pedigo submission fighting. We were just the Vikings that would rape and pillage. You knew our guys were going to give you fucking hard matches, and we had guys winning. But it didn't matter because people always told us, "Oh, they have guys winning at blue belt, but whatever. Okay, they're winning at purple belt, but purple belt doesn't matter." It's like, bitch, we didn't have anyone above that. Nobody.
Yeah.
So then Michael Sears ended up working for Flow, and I told you me and him were friends. And he did the first picture essay, which was like American Jiu-Jitsu in the Heartland or something, and that was the Daisy Fresh thing that they did. And then the owner of Flow really was inspired by what we were doing, and he said that we were his spirit animals. And he said, "I want you guys to do something on this. This is a genuine story. There's a real story here.
Yeah,
there's nothing. No one's talking about this." So he told them to do the first Daisy Fresh episodes, and that's how that all happened.
That's really cool.
But it's like, in the minds of the community, everyone thinks we just popped onto the scene in competition when the first Daisy Fresh episode came out. They don't realize we had put in 6 years winning every IBJJF, every tournament we went to, saving all of our money and like working our ass off to get to that point. We actually didn't get anything handed to us.
That was hard work. Pure hard work.
It was hard. I missed tournaments that I should have won. You know what I mean? I just couldn't afford to go.
Yes.
And the guy that won was a guy I just beat 30-0. It's like, so yeah, that's kind of the history of our team a little bit too.
That's really cool. And so then, like, if I remember, did I find out you got sponsored by like freaking Panda Express?
I am now sponsored by Panda Express.
How the hell did you
Hey, for all you guys out there that are wondering whether you should pursue your dream, they can come true. I have to keep finding new dreams because I keep kind of fulfilling all of mine.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like that's pretty cool. You know, I had a friend that used to have B-mans give him stuff, you know, and I was like, dude, that's fire. You just get food and go train, you know? So that's really cool.
There was so much that went into us getting to the position that we're in now. And that's why our guys are not arrogant. Like, we have had a few guys that joined the team after our success that don't quite understand how much it took for us to get to this point.
Yes, that's like a lot of hard work.
Me and Bird have been here from the beginning. Heath, a lot of the old school guard, you know, like that we've been through different iterations of the A team essentially.
Yes.
And the original people that I came up with all quit, or they faded away sometimes, or they changed their priorities, and that's all fine. I've never have any issue with that. Like people can change their mind. They can have different goals, and it's healthy to accept that and be their friend anyways.
Yeah.
But we've had multiple iterations of the A team before we got to the point we're at now, where we have a superstar lineup and we can compete at every belt and we're winning at every belt because we just didn't have anyone at any belts before.
So it made it hard because no one was respecting it.
You got to understand too, our guys are homegrown.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like our guys, when we were winning, especially in the first 4 or 5 years, everyone was from Mount Vernon, or they were people who they needed something in their life. And he gave them the opportunity to try this out as that.
Yes.
So he genuinely has a heart of gold when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for him going out of his way for me and Bird, we would be different people. And he mentored us.
Yeah.
I mean, like I was a socially awkward, angsty, probably autistic guy. I was weird. I was weird as fuck when I moved into the gym. I couldn't talk to people very well. I couldn't maintain eye contact well. I couldn't talk to girls. Okay. Like I had no confidence whatsoever at all. I had to, and Heath helped me with all of it. He didn't just help me with jiu-jitsu. He was a life coach.
That's awesome.
When people talk about how close our team is, sometimes from the outside, it looks like, because situations like that can be weird.
Yes.
They can very easily be a not healthy thing.
Yes.
Okay. And this is why I'm so, like, I rail about Colts and jiu-jitsu all the time, but I'm not oblivious to what our gym could have been.
Yes.
Okay. But it's not, because you have to have that bad intention.
Yes.
Almost. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Our gym is not insular whatsoever.
Yes.
We have visitors from all over the world who come for a week or a month. We don't do affiliation charges. I don't think he charges anyone in our affiliation. He only accepts people that he thinks really needs the help.
Yes.
Our affiliates are people that were training out of garages.
Yes.
That wanted help. They wanted to get good at jiu-jitsu and do what we are doing. So we were helping them.
Yes.
And he doesn't take money from them for that.
That's awesome.
Okay. So, and that's important to us. It's because our gym membership fee has always been $50. Okay.
That's awesome.
And most of us couldn't afford it. Heath has never charged me to live in the gym.
That's good of him.
He never charged Bird. Anyone that couldn't afford to come, he would rather they come than not come. It doesn't, the money's never been important to us. And it's funny that the community attacks us for that sometimes, despite the fact that that's how it should be.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
Like they are like, well, they have no business sense. It's like, we're basically running a nonprofit.
Yeah.
It's not legally a nonprofit. And you guys just don't get it because you have a different value system and priorities than we do.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I think what you guys are doing is great. That's really awesome.
We're at the point now that it's massively paying off. We're actually getting a new building now.
Nice. Congratulations.
We have it already. Yes. Heath already signed the contract and gave the down payment.
Sweet.
I was starting to lose faith that it was ever going to happen, because 6 years in a laundromat, we didn't think that was optimal training conditions. No, don't get us wrong. The thing we actually got out of it though was like an unintentional side effect, is that the shitty conditions they can make you tougher.
Yeah.
But none of that ever mattered to me anyways. I don't care. I am the kind of guy, I could just live in anything. I don't care.
Yeah.
Things that bother other people actually just don't really bother me. So we just didn't have the money to do anything else. It was so different for our team. Heath wasn't making money from the gym. He was just trying to keep the lights on.
That makes sense.
You know? And we had a bunch of guys that just didn't even pay, you know? So like our team never had, 100 students total, but let's say if we had 50 students, 30 of them would be at every class.
Okay.
So we always have had big numbers, and our
Yeah, that's
people,
a big class.
it's like our environment enables you to actually pursue that dream and
Yes.
train hard. And it's just purely about the jiu-jitsu. There's nothing else outside of that to these
Yep.
guys,
Yep.
you know? And the fact that, Heath is a good person, and it's just like he's not abusing the fact that that's why everyone's so loyal to Heath. And you hear people talk so aggressively defending him sometimes from our team. It's because to them, it's like Heath has done all this for them.
Oh yeah,
You know
absolutely.
what I
I would
mean?
see
And
why. Yeah.
the only thing, it's like that could become a cult-like situation, but Heath is not interested in that.
Yes.
He wants us to cross train.
Yes.
He wants us to go out into the world. He sent me to other gyms just to get more experience. He's left me at gyms. Literally. We've left Bird in California before. He left me in California before he
Just
sent me to
like drop you
Detroit.
off, like bye.
No, we went out to California for the Worlds, and then Heath and them all drove home and left me at Orlando's. Happened to Bird too, because we needed the experience. We needed
Orlando Sanchez in
more,
Pasadena.
yeah, we needed more outside competition experience, and there was another tournament coming up soon. It was like the nationals, and we can't afford to come back out, so I just stayed with Orlando for a month or two.
That's cool.
But that's what I mean. Heath has always sent us out to do stuff like that.
Yes.
And I've put a lot of thought into like cult prevention and stuff like that. And the first thing you have to have is insulation.
Yes.
Because if you're insulated, you can't see it from a different perspective. And they a lot of cults go out of their way to make sure you aren't or alienate everyone else before you introduce yourself to them. So you're already primed to disregard what they say.
So
and
true.
There's a lot of little things that just don't happen in our gym. So it's like, I think we're lucky. I consider myself lucky. I didn't get any of the bullshit Brazilian jiu-jitsu culture, because our culture is fucked.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, way more than people realize. Okay. So I didn't get any of that because we never had that. Heath didn't learn it from a Brazilian. He learned it from watching tapes and figuring it out and studying competition stuff. And that's how we learned. And we had our own outside the box thinking, because we were never in the box.
Yes. Yes.
And then when I finally realized that everyone wasn't kidding, that there were gyms out there that wouldn't let you wear a certain color gi, or you have to turn away from the instructor. I always thought they were joking. I was like, no way, that's real. No one would actually do that. That's the stupidest shit I've ever heard. And then it turned out it was real. And they a couple times I went to gyms and they tried to do shit like that to me, but I would just fucking tap every black belt in the room as a blue belt. So they can't. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I would not put up with shit like that. I'm not disrespectful, but you don't get to enforce your respect on me if you can't actually roll with me.
Exactly.
Because it's not about that. It's not about the forced respect.
I agree. I'm very lucky. I was always encouraged to cross train by Frangina. He wasn't very culty in that sense. He was always like, train everywhere. But I've heard from my fellow jiu-jitteros, of the shit they've dealt with. And I'm just like, so glad.
We got lucky. We just didn't have to deal with it. I just didn't even think it was real.
Yep.
And then when I figured out it was real, I obviously, from a purely intellectual and moral standpoint, I oppose all of that.
Oh, of course.
And so but the thing is, I don't mind that all the old school conservative Brazilians hate me, because they already hated me. They hated me for just winning and just being American. They were always going to hate me. The fact that I completely, on an intrinsic level, oppose their fucking hierarchy bullshit nonsense that's just about making money and having a power. It's just they're gonna hate me anyways.
Yeah,
there's no skin on my back. I'll keep saying what I'm saying, and
it's the truth.
As long as they don't just like stab me,
just don't come stab me. It's all good. Yeah, exactly. Man, well, this was great. This is a great talk. I really appreciate. This was really cool to hear about, like, your team story, your story, what you guys are doing. Like, that's awesome. Can't wait to have you out for a seminar soon.
I know. I do want to come out. We didn't say a date yet, right?
Yeah, no, not yet. But
I'm struggling with dates right now.
Yeah, well, right now I still got to get my summer camp with Mason Fowler and all that out the way, and then get that done, and then kind of get you out next. But yeah, it'll be fun little high altitude camp. We're at 7,000 feet here. So
oh God, I'm gonna be exhausted.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You definitely will feel it. So. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk. I'm gonna go run and teach a class right now. I'm sure you got to get and go.
I do have to leave soon, so
thank you again so much.
Yep, thanks for having me on.
Yep, have a wonderful day, and thank you everybody for listening in.
All right, you have a nice day.
All right, you too.